Alright, this is my first officially recorded run of Pool of Radiance 100%. This is actually pre-recording. I was not feeling up to trying to split or commentate on it while doing it because I've been ill. So this is also the first time I'm officially timing it, although it comes in under 3 hours. I'm adding commentary because I like having commentary with my runs of my video, so why not? So, after a lot of work has been done by a couple of other runners to Pool of Radiance out of nowhere the past month and a half or so, there are quite a few things that have been added to the regular any percent run, and it is now 1 hour faster than what I had before, cutting out a whole lot of unnecessary stuff and tricks I was always afraid to do. But so this, although we've talked about it a bit, none of us have yet tackled much in the way of a 100% run. We've been discussing the categories, which generally is going to end up being probably 100% all major quests. So every area has to be at least semi-cleared. Some have major quests involved in them, others... only one requires a actual full clear of defeating all the random encounters, which is the slums. It's part of the necessary progression quest. All the rest have some other major event associated with it, which the clan clerk rewards you for, and so that's what we do. So, first off, I have a party of 6, although many of the runs, I'm probably going to be cutting it down for now, but I always generally like the safety of a full party of 6. I don't have a lot of money, so I give just longsword, shields, and banded mail the best overall armor and weapons you can get for fighters. For my first 5 characters and my last one, who is a thief, I have given just a longsword, short bow, and arrows to, so he can sit in the back and fire. He can't wear heavier armor as a thief, because if he does, he can't use his thief skills. The thief turns out, I have 4 fighter magic users, because you get enough experience for the multiple classes doing 100%. And this makes them very strong because they can wield weapons and armor and use sleep spells on the enemy. I have a fighter magic user cleric just for a bit of cleric safety. They have a few useful spells, especially hold persons later on, which is one of the more useful things about them. And then, of course, the fighter magic user thief. So we all have sleep spells, which allows us to easily clear out most of the encounters in the slums, which is our first major test. And then, of course, the cleric. As I say, the thief turns out not to be that useful, so I'm probably going to drop the thief, try it with a group of 5, and then maybe even drop the cleric as well, we'll see. Although there are a few things that the cleric does very usefully here later on. So we're surprised by goblins here for our first random encounter. We have to clear 15 of these in order to clear the slums. It's the only grinding of any sort that we really do in the game. Making sure that we take care of all of these random encounters it's necessary to clear. There are certain other areas you can clear by doing random encounters, but all those areas that's extra long and with other unnecessary things, really, but they all have quests that can be associated with it that you can do instead. So, as a group, we've generally not been in favor of trying to do those full clear things, so I think that this kind of setting that I'm going with is a good compromise for a true 100% category that we can all live with. And if we get it short enough, maybe they can run it too. They have inability to run multi-hour runs because of their situations, but if we get this down enough, they can run that as well, and that sounds like a good compromise to me. So here's our second random encounter. Sleep spells, of course, are extremely overpowered in low-level D&D, especially in the first couple of editions. There's no saving throw against it. You roll damage for the spell to see how many hit dice it affects, or hit points total that it affects, and it hits everything in a 3x3 square, all of the adjacent squares to this one you select. And it can affect your party, so you have to be careful with it, but unlike games like Final Fantasy, where a sleep spell just makes you easy to hit, and then you will be, you'll wake up and continue battle, if you are hit while helpless in any way, sleeping or paralyzed, or some such, in the Gold Box rules at least, they are allowed to do a coup de grace one-shot against you and instantly defeat you. So with this, boom, this entire group here is completely cleared. Now, I have greatly adapted my initial run of this from the recent run of Rich B, who held the current 14-minute any percent record for this game. and he rushes into the very final area to collect some good magic items and experience to get his team all the money and items he really needs, or most of them that he needs to complete the entire game right off the bat. Now, of course, I have to clear out a whole lot of areas, so I cannot do that, but still, these items are useful to grab. I always knew that this was possible, but I was always afraid of doing it because I'm a rather neurotic person, even though it's just a game and you can infinitely retry and things. It was always something I was afraid to do, but now that he has pushed the boundaries and proved that it's possible, there are some very valuable items I can grab that greatly speed this whole thing up. So, I'm doing my encounters. It's really hard for me to count them when they're going on, but that was 3, I believe. This is 4. And if I was better at doing splits, I could possibly just have a different split for each of the first 50 encounters to help keep track of them, but mostly I just go until I obviously lose a bit of time. If I could count them better, that would make this go a little bit faster, because I wouldn't lose about 30 seconds trying to figure out that, did I actually get everything? Is it all good? Okay. But here with sleep spells, this makes this completely horrible. Now, one of the big things of the Gold Box games in general, and Pool of Radiance in particular, is that there are certain areas that are safe to sleep in and certain areas that aren't. And this, in the slums, anytime you clear out a room that has a set encounter in it, as this northern room here that I've been playing at is, that I keep sleeping in, anytime you do this, you are guaranteed to be able to rest free no matter how long you take. Even though they're wandering monsters wandering around, they never wander into areas where you had set encounters, and you can sleep for days or months and nothing will bother you. No worries. But anywhere else you have a chance of getting encounters. So by using this section, it's a great point to grind out these 15 encounters because of situations like this. Goblin leaders especially have longbows with 20 arrows. As you can see, I'm looting here for my characters to make up for not having them before. Ranged weapons are extremely powerful in Pool of Radiance, especially since you attack twice a turn with them and can do it from long range. So your effective damage is nearly as much as it is with melee, but you're completely safe. Now, this is one of the things the cleric can do. I end up never really using the Bless spell, so I should scrap it entirely, but having the Cure Light Wounds can save a tiny bit of time on resting for days at least. Hard to say whether, in most circumstances, it's still faster just to rest for days, but this is something that I've played around with a little. The biggest use for it will be in a couple places later on. I really probably could drop the cleric, but there are a few things where they are kind of nice, so it'll be a while before I totally feel comfortable getting rid of the cleric. Once again, this is a pretty basic area. We just use these sleep spells. I should also use this time to mention another thing that I usually mention in these Gold Box games. First edition AD&D is racist and sexist. You have extreme limitations if you do anything other than human males. Female characters all have a lower maximum strength, and all my characters have the maximum available stats because the game allows you to modify to those, and so there's no reason not to have the best stats possible to make your party as strong as possible. So that's just what we go with. But just by being a female, you get no advantage for being female, but you do have, with one exception of one quest in Curse of the Azure Bonds, but then you also have a lower maximum strength, so you do a lot less damage, and it's a lot less damage. A female half-elf, for instance, can only have a 17 strength, which means you only get +1 to hit and +1 damage. A half-elf male can get up to 1890 strength, which is +2 to hit and +4 damage. So you do 3 more points of damage per melee hit, which is a pretty high amount all on its own when you're only doing 1 to 8 damage with a weapon generally. Maybe up to, well, if you use a two-handed sword against a large creature, 3 to 18, so it doesn't make as much damage there, but most enemies you're fighting, you're doing 1 to 6, 1 to 8 points of damage, so an automatic +3 is almost double damage right there versus that. So it's just pointless to have female characters. The only good thing about demi-humans, as they're called in first edition AD&D, your elves, your half-elves, your dwarves, is that they can multi-class. They can be 2 classes simultaneously, and they get all the advantages and none of the disadvantages. So, fighter magic users can wear banded mail or plate mail, as you see I'm wearing here, but they are allowed to wear those while they cast spells. Humans can only advance in one class at a time, and eventually they can change to another class, and that has weird restrictions. Until they surpass their previous class in level, they can't use any of the previous class's abilities, although they keep their hit points. And then even when they do that, when they eventually surpass it, they'll get back. Like, if you start a fighter and then become a mage, you lose the ability to use weapons and armor. Once, say you did it as a level 8 fighter, until you become a level 9 mage, you have no fighter abilities. Then when you become a level 9 mage, boom, you get your fighter abilities back, but you still can't wear armor and cast spells. It's kind of a weird little thing in the game, which they later balance out in the second edition. They make it so that multiracial things are under the same restriction. They also get rid of some of the max strength problems that a lot of those classes have, so it balances out overall. The other big problem in first edition with multi-class, with demi-humans, however, is that they have a level cap on all classes except Thief. Half-elves, for instance, can only get up to a level 8 fighter and a level 8 magic user. However, in Pool of Radiance, this is not a problem because you can't surpass those limits anyway. Level 8 fighter is the max you can reach with anyone. The game just won't allow you to go higher, and level 6 magic user is the highest you can reach as well, so you can't get level 4 spells. How the game is designed, it's supposed to be a low-level thing. You progress through the later games to get higher-level characters, so that's not something we have to worry about. We do have less strength. We're missing out on 1 to hit and 2 damage, but having this many sleep spells greatly speeds up this grind, and not as much everything else, since we're about to get an overpowered item that can be used by anyone. It is possible that, again, this is the same party I had for my first couple of forays into this, where the just basically, I've done a couple practice runs of this so far, and I was still stuck on my old mode of doing everything pretty much as intended in the order and using just a few kinds of exploits and things later on, especially with Dust of Disappearance once I get it. But I never really, ventured into getting Necklace of Missiles that we'll be picking up in the final area, for instance, in the Vallejo Castle. But with the ability to do that, I probably don't need quite as many sleep spells. I could get by with probably just maybe 2 mages. It's something that I will probably be continue testing out a little bit, especially since I know now that I can get this sub 3 easily, sub 2 probably really soon, maybe even to sub 1. We'll see if we clear up an out of those. And the one major disadvantage to having multi-class characters, besides of course having to be demi-humans, which are worse than normal humans, is that your experience is split. So you're basically only getting half as much experience since it's going into the 2 classes. So you normally need about 2,000 experience to level up a fighter, and 2,500 to level up a mage to your first levels. But as a fighter magic user, what you essentially need is 4,000 experience to level fighter and 5,000 to level mage. Which, when I was first doing this, I didn't consider it much of a problem because you get so much done over the course of this anyway that you'll get enough experience to reach about the same levels you would in my old any percent run, just doing it normally, legitimately. However, there is now as I've been playing with it, and especially, with the help of these other people who are a lot less... One of the biggest problems that I have in general with doing all these is that I am a completionist at heart. I want to try and do everything, and so it's been really hard for me to cut down on the things that I need to do. And that was, I think, most shown in my Curse of the Azure Bonds run, because that's the game I know better than any of the others in the Gold Box. And so when I first started it, I was hitting pretty much every treasure in every area. Even though they really weren't necessary, especially ones later on, I had to grab them because that's what you do. But then as I started going on and getting better and better at that game and wanting to cut the time down, I started saying, well, I don't need the Salamander treasure in the Dracolich Cave. I don't need any of this extra stuff in Rakandros' tower. I don't need to grab the treasure behind the altar in the Moander cult area. And finally, I don't even need to grab the Girdle of Storm Giant Strength and the +5 Longsword from Myth Draenor. Those are unnecessary. I have infinite Dust of Disappearance and Necklace of Missiles, and extra strength and on one character and a +5 sword don't make that much difference. So with that in mind, you know, there's a lot that I can cut out, and there's a lot that I can cut out from here as well. I'm grabbing most of a lot of extra treasure over the course of this run, mostly just to get enough experience to get my guys up in the levels that I think that I need. But quite honestly, I can probably cut out quite a lot of them, especially if I break these guys down to maybe a couple of regular fighters and then maybe a couple of mages or some such thing. Having all of these numbers does really help early on, though. So I finally finished my 15 encounters. I don't know where the split is here. It's kind of weird, so whatever. I made a bit of a mistake here. I'm grabbing, similar to Rich B's any % run, I'm grabbing a couple of the readily available treasure piles in this area before I go, but there's one more I should have grabbed that would have saved me a bit of time, gotten me a little bit of extra experience I could have used. Unfortunate I didn't do that, but oh well. But it's a bit of a time save. We'll see it. I'll point it out when we come back to it later on. I do grab this extra one since it's necessary. Rich B skips this because it has a required fight and is not really all that impressive of a reward, but since I do have to clear the slums and have to do it anyway, I might as well do it since I'm here. So voila, this is usually an easy fight, and you can go a lot faster by putting sleep spells, so then you're not relying on the roll of the die to try and get enough, you know, the hits that you need. So now memorize my sleep spells really fast again, as we always do after clearing one of these areas. And then we're going to move on into Kuto's Well. This is one of the more RNG heavy segments of the run, because if we get into a lot of annoying encounters here, we can lose a bunch of time. I like to do safety saves because it's faster to reload than it is to fight these battles usually. Luckily we surprised this party of gnolls, so if you flee, you make monsters flee. Nothing going on here in the plaza, so we can just sneak through by coming here. We come upon a wagon. I always paid the guy 250 gold and because I'm a lawful good player, but it makes me feel bad, but the fastest way is just to kill him. You take the wagon, you get to sneak through, pay 15 gold to the bugbear to let you through, and now we can enter the final area in the game. And we get a disguise here, which will allow us to go around the castle without being bothered by random encounters and such. So now I'm looking at the map. I'm spending some time here because I'm not used to doing this. Once I do this a few more times and I know exactly where I'm going, I'll be able to do this a bit faster. I'm going over here, first of all, to collect a... and again, this is stuff I've totally ignored in my speedrun because I only come here when I'm ready to kill Tyrantraxis anyway. So, but I've seen Rich B do it, and with nothing to go on but just his very fast videos, he rushes through this. I'm trying to adjust and use my own... guidebook map that I've got to figure stuff out. So we grabbed this potion here for a bit of experience. Probably not necessary. I actually wanted to use it for this fight, but I forgot to. Because it's a potion of speed, which doubles your attacks and such, and would have been useful for taking this guy out, but it wasn't really necessary. Again, it would be slightly more useful in if I cut down my characters a little bit. So this is a trick that they've discovered, which is they kind of consider a glitch. I think it's just more of a little AI exploit, and I would allow it in glitchless myself, but if you move away from a character, they will retaliate. Reaction command, as later editions of D&D call it, to attack you from behind as you're trying to flee. However, if you do that, it actually takes away their action in the game, so they don't get a turn if you do it before they get their turn. So, I guess kind of a little bug, but it's so very minor, I just wouldn't count it. But it's very useful against this mage because it prevents him from using this devastating wand of lightning or any of his high-level spells that he has. Gives us a lot of experience for grabbing all this extra loot, including the second best bracers you can get in either this game or even any of the other two games thus far. Curse of the Azure Bonds and Secret of Silver Blades, both, you're lucky if you get bracers of armor class 3 anytime. And we just picked them up at the very beginning of the game. That's what these are. So now, even without armor, Noir has armor class as good as anybody. The other item we really need to grab here, though, belongs to these Baneite clerics here. Quite luckily, this is not nearly as difficult a battle as I thought it was. Again, I'm consulting the map to figure out what it is. All we've got is a 5th level cleric. You can tell these guys are evil clerics. Look at that face. They are so fanatical. Even though he looks just like his acolytes, the 5th level cleric is much more dangerous, but our faster characters can usually get off sleep spells before they get a chance to do anything. And voila. That's a good reason to have at least 2 mages so we can do that. He also has a mace +3, which is wild, and is it plate +2 or +1? I can't remember, but it's really good. So with that, he has really good armor. +3 mace is one of the best weapons in the entire game, even though the damage against large creatures is smaller compared to, say, long swords. It's still 1d6 +8 is extreme damage. I'm spending way too much time admiring this incredible thing, trying to figure out, is that actually +3? Yeah, it is. So that's all the major loot we had to catch here. And here's the other thing I'm not sure about is leaving. Because again, with the text of Richby's video going so fast, I have no idea what's happening here. And I've never tried anything of the sort. But as you try to leave the gate, you no longer have your wagon disguise. And so the bugbears... I'm trying to figure out a way to just leave the city from here. There is none. That's the tower. We don't want to go up that. So we go through the gate. And they tell us we have to surrender or fight. I really don't think that we can surrender. Maybe fleeing would be okay. They strip us of items, including all the money we had, which is a bit unfortunate, but that's okay, because we could sell our wand for all the money we need early game. One of the other big problems with having a group like this, especially for the 100% route where we get so much experience, is that we need so much more money to level up all of our characters. But you leave from the right, and then a group of Driders, we surprised them, which is very good. I saved the game there. If things had gone badly, I would have to reload from wherever I last saved, which is bad. So, now we've gotten back in town, and it's time to level up. I haven't completed any quests, so the one place that is open at night is the training ground, and the temples, they're open as well. Inn, probably, but I never use the inn. So we're going to identify our stuff here. We have to sell this wand. 15,000 gold is enough for us to use for quite a while, though. That's 500 platinum a person. So that's 2 level ups each, plus a little bit extra. Not enough to get us through the entire game, but it'll get us quite a ways. I thought that was a ring of better protection, but it's actually just fire resistance, so whatever. It's kind of pointless. You could actually probably sell that, because there's very little fire damage you have to worry about throughout most of the game. So just having it on one person is kind of a, whatever. The Necklace of Missiles is the most important item, though. We're going to be putting that to use pretty quick here. One of the things that you need to do each time you collect a lot of treasure is spend it somehow by identifying after pooling all your money. That changes it out to stuff. Now, I realize that first thing I want to do is get a bunch of Necklaces of Missiles, because those allow you to cast Fireball. And if you've watched my Curse of the Azure Bonds run, you know exactly how devastating that is. My first major success at the Pool of Radiance any percent was when I randomly got a drop of Necklace of Missiles from Yarash's Pyramid. And if you get that random drop, it has an infinite number of charges, and so it really lets you dominate the game. But unfortunately, the one that you pick up from the Temple of Bane there has a limited number of charges, but that's okay. We can use our duping technology to do it. And again, if you've watched any of my previous runs of Curse of the Azure Bonds or Secret of the Silver Blades, I use this trick a lot. I never used it in Pool of Radiance before because the game was so short and you didn't get any of the good items for so long that it wasn't worth it. Although now, technically, the any percent run does use duping because this Necklace of Missiles can be grabbed super early and makes the rest of the game super simple. Once you get the Necklace of Missiles, you really only need to do 2 more things in this game in order to beat it, really. So what we're going to do is remove one of our characters, and again, if I have 5 or less characters, this will be speeded up. I'm going to trade this Necklace of Missiles to Mr. Dummy, who is Dummy T is my special dupe character. I accidentally renamed him because of weird things happening, but that's his name. I trade the Necklace of Missiles to him after saving the game, and then I remove him from the party, and he exists. The party pool exists separate than any of your save games. If you remove a character from a save game into the party pool and they're already in the party pool, they'll be overwritten. Otherwise, nothing is affected by them no matter what you load. So after giving the necklace and removing Dummy T from the party, he has a Necklace of Missiles no matter what I do. So then I drop my party to take me back to the main initial loading screen. I load up my game, which I saved before I gave away the necklace. Since I hadn't given away the necklace yet, I still have a necklace. So I bring Dummy T in and he has a necklace. So in this way, I've duplicated the Necklace of Missiles. And so I trade that to a party member, remove him from the party, save the game so that he is not part of it, or else it would overwrite his position in the character pool. Then I add him back to the party, give him both of my new Necklaces of Missiles, remove him from the party again so he's in the party pool, drop the party, reload that save game, and again, now I have 2 necklaces of missiles, and Dummy has 2 necklaces of missiles. And so you just keep repeating this with the items that you need until you have enough for everybody. Now, I wagered that I would probably need about 3 necklaces of missiles per person, which turns out to be pretty correct. If the biggest problem with dropping down to 4 is that for some of these fights, I may have to duplicate more necklaces of missiles in order to make up for that, which is a little bit troublesome, but it also means that there's some extra dupes that I do that probably are not very necessary as well. I also went overboard on Dust of Disappearance a little bit because I wasn't sure how many extra battles I'd be fighting. Once I get this down a little bit more and am a little bit more familiar with all those battles, I can probably reduce the number of all of those dupes that I do. The extra items I end up duping as well, I probably don't need. There are a couple of other ways to do it. As you'll see, probably the dust is the only other item I really should be duping. I went ahead and duped my plate mail +1, and it is +1, I did identify it, for Azure, because Azure lost his banded mail. When I surrendered to the guards, they took away just a couple of items and all of my money, which, as I say, wasn't a big problem because they didn't take what was important. I'm not sure what they choose to take. I'm not sure if this is even what Richby did. He may have fled, and maybe that's okay. Maybe you can just flee. That's probably the answer, but again, I didn't know. I panicked a little bit. I was hoping that you would still have your wagon disguise as you come out of the gate and they would leave you alone. And again, the big problem with running this game, especially on 600 cycles as it is the text goes by really quite fast, especially when you're really good at scamming through all of the typing really quickly. Rich B's typing is extremely fast. He's very good with the keyboard, knowing what options to put down. He has obviously put in a lot of practice offline. He's talked about that in some of his in his comments on the message board, and has only posted a couple of videos of his finished runs that are really good and eventually up there. So he's put a lot. I'm pretty good at a lot of them, but I don't know if I'll ever be as fast as he is. So I start out by doing a sleep spell, which actually is probably the correct answer. I was thinking afterwards, though, why am I doing that? I've got necklaces of missiles, but you don't want to use it against this group up here, so the sleep spell is still good for these ones that we're really close to. But anyway, now that, and that was first level ups as well, I'm really late on these splits. That's okay. These are kind of the unimportant ones. I am not super big on making sure that my splits are exactly right anyway. It's just they're not super necessary. The final time is the most important one, as long as I don't forget to split that. They're just kind of a guide look anyway, so it's whatever. But now we have to finish clearing out the slums. It is one of the longest and most involved, but having these necklaces of missiles will make the remaining fights go pretty darn quick. I spend a little bit more time. Again, I played these games so much, but doing Pool of Radiance in this fashion is a little bit unique. It's playing a lot more with the extra necklaces of missiles and such. It's playing a lot more like my Curse of the Azure Bonds and Secret of the Silver Blades runs. And so normally in Pool of Radiance, pretty much all I have is the sleep spell for most of the game, and then once I cast my sleep spells, the rest of my characters are just on auto combat because it's a lot faster. But the necklaces of missiles are dangerous to use on auto combat, so you don't want to use that, but they clear everything out so fast that they're definitely preferable to use. So one of the things that I'm wasting time on here is kind of going back and forth on whether I should be trying to go to auto combat or leave it alone. Now, this is the other one on the side I should have hit in my very first little thing. Now, the one good news is, since I did wait, I get to use necklaces of missiles to wipe out these hordes of kobolds super easily. But a couple of sleep spells will normally deal with all these guys anyway, so it isn't that much faster. I still think it might have been better just to clear them out quick on my way towards... But I don't know, maybe it's better off waiting for all those kinds of fights when you clear them out that quickly. So maybe it is better to do this. It's only 289 experience, too. That would have, in this position, gotten, I think, another level for, say, my cleric. But especially when I go down to 5 characters on my next run, that's not going to be as much of an issue. And there's one other place I can grab early on. A magic sword from the place will give me a little bit more experience. But this is definitely an area where it's good that we waited on, because this is one of the more annoying fights of the slums, and having fireballs to clear out these huge hordes of congested orcs is extremely nice. A sleep spell on those guys would have allowed us to clear them out a little bit quicker, probably, but I didn't really think of that. Since he had freedom, one of the things that I'm often afraid to do is run away from enemies and elicit free attacks, but you're generally pretty safe for it, especially with 14 hit points, and considering it's just an orc, which is a first level kind of monster, it was very safe. I didn't get hit, and he was able to move up and wipe out the rest of the group with a fireball, and now we just have this guy left. Again, if I just used a sleep spell initially as well, that also would have made that go quite a bit quicker. Don't have any loot, so now this area is, again, a little bit... this is another place where it's really good that I have as many sleep spells as I do, because this is too small an area for the Necklace of Missiles to be effective, but with our extra sleep spells, we can put almost the entire group to sleep, everyone but the Gnoll. And actually, if I'd moved red or crimson down one square before, I could have cast another one on the last Gnoll and taken him out more quickly as well. That's something I need to keep in mind in the future as well. Or even just cast it on the Gnoll anyway, because if it puts, well, that's a little dangerous, because there's a possibility it puts him to sleep, but not the Gnoll to sleep, because he has too many hit points. But if it puts them both to sleep, then I'm fine, because everybody is unconscious. Sleeping, so I get to one-shot them all, and they won't be able to attack me. But in any case, that could have been a really quick, easy thing to do. So now we're going to go ahead and rest here, because it is a room with an encounter. We need to get some healing done to Crimson and get our sleep spells back for the next one. So this is something for me to keep in mind in the future. Already I'm seeing that we could probably save at least 10 minutes from up to this point from my better execution and a little bit better use of things and spells. There's only 2 encounters left in the slums, and then a quest that I once again forget about. This is another area which is very, very annoying if you don't have necklaces of missiles, but thank goodness with the necklace of missiles, blowing up all of these goblins is super easy. One of them, it was a low enough level necklace of missiles so that one goblin leader managed to survive. I wanted to hit them in the corner, but nope, my characters are too close, so that's rather very unfortunate. But sleep spell will make do. I wager that Viridian should be relatively safe since everybody else has pretty much been hit, and I'm right. There's only one goblin that isn't sleeping, and he is not next to Viridian, so even if Viridian had fallen asleep, I would have been safe there. That's one of the things I know of. Now, the nice thing about leveling up for this... I should mention, too, one of the very important reasons why you need to get your encounters done first is that the random encounters will increase in difficulty the higher level you are as well as the numbers. There will be less people in the random encounters if I have less characters, which is very, very time-saving because you don't get any experience from battles. Not very much, anyway. You get like 50 from the battles. It's actually looting treasure piles that gets you experience, which is why I do so much time looking for piles of treasure in certain areas. It's actually one of the things that affected my original Pool of Radiance route and why I go to Yarash's Pyramid, because it's a pretty quick dungeon with only one fight in it, and it gives you multiple thousands of experience for your party. So it's a very valuable one that gets even more valuable if I reduce the number of characters. So reducing the amount of enemies in your random encounters is something that can save quite a bit of time on its own as well. I did a 15-minute 15 encounters here, a little bit late on the split, but as Rich B said, he did some practice with his 4-person party, and it only took him about 13-ish minutes, both of which are much faster than my any percent time at clearing 15 encounters in the slum. Something I've done consistently because the experience was pretty good here, and I always felt I needed it. But now, the Rope Guild area is the last one. I'm double-checking everything. It's actually been a very long time since I'd done anything in Pool of Radiance at all, and so although I still mostly have everything memorized, I wasn't sure myself. Again, I'm kind of neurotic and partially paranoid, and I was afraid I was missing something, so I'm double-checking everything. I end up missing something anyway, minorly. But there are 2 things we need to do in the Rope Guild. The first is to collect this potion for Olo. You have to deal with Olo in order to clear the slums, even though he's just a mage. Somehow he is a threat to Flan unless you give him his Potion of Youth, and then he's suddenly happy. We also have to deal with the trolls, which normally in my original any percent was the most dangerous and most difficult fight in the game. But now with Necklaces of Missiles, it's slightly long, but not particularly dangerous. This is where it's useful to have a cleric, though, because I could have slept in one of the other rooms instead, but I forgot. Oops, but a couple of quick heal spells will make it so that he is a lot less likely to die, because these trolls, especially if they go before I get too many of my Necklaces of Missiles off, can do a lot of damage and kill your character. But with a bunch of Necklaces of Missiles, this is a relatively simple fight. Trolls have a lot of hit points, but the fire should be preventing them from regenerating. We're getting a lot of low rolls, which is bad. If your RNG is better for this point, you can wipe them out really fast. 17's a lot better. A couple more hits, and then, yeah, really quite honestly, for large portions of this game, it's probably the one time that I shouldn't worry about quick combat and just be using those things. Now, they drop some items. I figured that they were arrows +1 that I could combine with the other arrows +1, but you can't. It's a weird thing in the game that sometimes happens. I think random arrows that drop are different somehow than normal arrows that drop from a regular set, so you can't combine them, which is a bit annoying. I am really bad with my menuing decisions and equipping stuff. A lot of it really isn't necessary, but again, I'm just so used to doing things this way. So here's the slums completed. This is my first... Oh, but I realize I haven't completed the slums because I didn't give the potion to Olo. So I have to go give him his potion in order to clear the slums. Going a bit too fast for myself, too, and forgetting where I was. So now we give him the potion. You don't actually have to talk to him. Somehow he magically knows that we went and got the potion for him, just like we magically knew that we needed to say it was Olo. The game doesn't check at either point to see if he's already given you the quest to go get his potion. You can also fight him and his guards, but that's a lot slower than getting the potion and giving it to him, even with the magical wonder of Necklaces of Missiles. As well as, you know, wanting to save as many charges as possible. Quite honestly, it is important to kind of have weapons for some of the things. But for situations where you can't use the Necklaces of Missiles, but really, especially after I get the Dust of Disappearance, it'd probably be quicker to... do this. And I'm actually probably doing this wrong as well. I've already adjusted these splits so many times, but quite honestly, Sokal Keep is going to be my next destination, and then I should immediately go from Sokal Keep to the temple and wealthy area, and maybe the mansion. Mansion's a little bit more dangerous if we don't have some points, which is the advantage to doing it this way. But if we get the Dust of Disappearance as soon as possible, we can, and then we can multiply that much quicker and have that much less trouble with a bunch of these fights, especially things like the Basilisk, the Spectre. The Spectre went pretty darn well, as we're going to see, but if you can use Dust of Disappearance before that fight, it's a lot better, so they don't drain your strength permanently and do other things the Spectres do, which... A lot of the high-level undead, especially in First Edition, have a lot of wacky things that they do to you. Wights and ghasts and wraiths tend to drain levels. Do ghasts? No, they paralyze and poison. Wights and wraiths drain levels. Vampires drain levels. Ghosts age you. I think specters permanently drain strength. It's pretty crazy, but it's something you don't want to be hit by. Luckily, we do our next level ups. And again, once I skip my thief, this is something I'll just totally be ignoring. Because he can level up, but he doesn't have enough money for it. Again, that's something that is less of a worry when you have less character. Let's see, so... all in total, I have 16... I'm trying to rest here. This is something I saw another of the... runners do in his runs. Ozzy98, he was somehow able to sleep in these rooms. Maybe he has a different edition of the game that allows you to do that, but for whatever reason, he was able to rest in these rooms, but the guards always roused me. Maybe it's because that he fought them in his in the route that he chose to get the experience he did. So I kept around finding place, usually from the mages area. But it turns out that you can't. So again, I can save a little bit of time if I don't waste time doing this here. But the next step will definitely need to be so-called keep. I guess you could even do the slums and Kuto as well, or the slums until after so-called keep in the temple at this point, really. But I like getting the extra experience, having a few more fights is a little bit more experience for more hit points to survive some of the more dangerous areas. Always good. So-called keep is the only place that is semi-required. It's difficult to get around without doing the keep. You need to do the keep in order to... Well, technically, even you don't, really. You could find ways to get around by, like, going to Podol Plaza and heading west out, and you leave the city, and then you can wander around and explore the areas outside of the city. Now, this is something I always wished for, and Rich B made my dreams come true. This fight is so difficult and annoying without fireballs to blow up all of these huge amounts of low hit point enemies. And there's the big roll I really needed for the trolls, 33-point fireball. But 3 fireballs will pretty much decimate this entire group. So, yeah, because the missiles on everyone, boom, they're all dead. I go ahead and grab the little bit of extra treasure points here too, which aren't strictly necessary. I should have run forward with somebody a little more to try and get the last thing, but I didn't. As I'm considering it, a couple of the things that I grab, like bracers and such, are probably really useful for to grab as treasure as well because of the movement. Especially considering the short range of Necklace of Missiles for some of these fights. Having more characters with much faster movement speed would be really useful. So I probably ought to forego some armor on some of my characters and instead give them some of the bracers, instead of just giving it to the fighter thief. Now, I'm collecting this treasure for, again, a little bit of experience. It's only 208 experience, but it's a bit of extra money and stuff. Probably not really worth it. 208 isn't a lot, considering the how far away it is. There's, like, frogs in here with the magic hammer as well. I've been skipping that forever because it's very minor experience for what you get out of it. This is easy to get, though. 333, a +2 weapon, which is valuable. +1 chainmail, which is 12 movement, so that's pretty nice. Mostly for the 12 movement. It's the same as banded mail as well, which is the other nice thing about it. And again, but just having a better memory of my weapons would go a long way towards helping this out as well. Now, +2 mace and a +3 mace are very good for my front 2 fighters to do a lot of damage. -4 armor class is insane for 3rd level AD&D characters. Again, weird thing about armor class in 1st and 2nd edition is that it counted so lower was better, which kind of looked weird. When they redid it in 3rd edition to be higher, it made a lot of sense because you start with the base 10, and that's what a normal person needs to hit what they need to roll on a d20. So you have roughly a 55% chance to hit a armor class 10, totally unarmored, slow-moving person. Once you throw on armor and get up, so you'd have a 20 or higher, and you need to roll a 20 plus any bonuses from your level, strength, etc., armor starts to get good. But here instead you have this Thaco, or Thaco, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And that determines the roll you need to hit 0, and so you add the armor class to your roll to see if you hit. So if your Thaco is 14, like his was, and you roll a 6, and they have an armor class of 8, well, guess what? You hit them. If you roll a 16 and they have an armor class of -2, you hit them. For one of my guys to hit the other with his 14 to try to hit a -4, he has to roll an 18. So Because you had 18, you'd subtract 4 from it, because adding a negative that's how math works. It's simple enough for me. I don't mind Thaco, and in some ways I kind of like it because it's a nice little nostalgic thing, because I grew up playing first edition AD&D with my parents. But it definitely, especially for people who aren't big on math, and I'm fine with math, especially really simple math like that, but for all people, yeah, the system they have in 3rd edition and such works a lot better. So that's the completion of So-Called Keep. Went a little bit... These splits are hard to judge on just like actually saving a minute and a half, because I actually did other things and such too. The splits are a little bit different than what you would think, because this is actually about the time it would take. So now I'm trying to determine where I'm going next, because I don't have that quite down yet. Once again, this is the first time I played Pool of Radiance in probably about 4 months. So deciding that Kuto's Well is next, because that's what I kind of had in the list. But I'm thinking at this point, especially, this is just about fine. I could probably go and clear out the temple, wealthy area, and mansion at this point instead, and then go back for Kuto's Well, and then the Plaza Cordana Library, and maybe do the Well, Plaza, Textile House, and Library all in the same section as well. Just hit those 4 areas real fast, and be done with it. Yeah, a couple of things that can be done there. That'd make a pretty nice route, actually. Go to the well, then go to the plaza. You could pop down into the textile house and over to the library. You have to go around, it's a little bit roundabout, because you don't want to go directly through the textile house, because there's a lot of set encounters you'd have to deal with. But you could go around that way. One of the other reasons that I wanted to have a thief for the 100% was that I wanted to officially, more properly complete the Cordona's Family Legacy quest by getting the thieves to open the box for me and then seal it, so I get the double reward. But as we were talking about it on the thing, that probably, isn't really necessary just to do, since there are a couple of ways to really complete it. It's kind of a weird thing there, but I finally decided that yeah, we can just go with opening it. It doesn't matter. We don't want to ruin a run just because somebody wanted to open it, and that is much faster than trying to get to the thieves and do everything else around it. Now this was a little bit of a mistake on my part, which turned out not to be such a big mistake because of something I didn't realize. But the first time you try to enter a building around here, 2 groups of kobolds come out and attack you. And normally that happens when you go into the well. But as we're going to see, it doesn't happen this time when I go inside the well. So this is one of the quests that's been kind of under debate. You're never given this quest, but it is a major reward, and it's the only way to clear this area. And so I have arbitrarily decided, at least for my runs, that I'm going to clear Kuto's Well, because it is the only way you can clear Kuto's Well. There's been some arguments that if you're going to count this for clearing Kuto's Well, you'd have to also clear the textile house, the plaza, the library, by doing all the encounters in those areas, because they give extra rewards for clearing them from the clerk, but they're kind of really minor rewards. However, the ruling that I think makes sense is that every area you should do something with, even if it's only 1 encounter required to clear it or whatever. So Puldal Plaza, your quest is to get the auction, or you can clear it normally, but the auction's a lot faster. The textile house, you want the treasure. The library, you get the books for the clerk. You could also probably skip killing the basilisks there. I'd be fine with that, but but if everyone wants to count the basilisk as well, I do it in this run, so whatever. But I'd be fine with skipping the basilisk and still counting it as long as you get the 5 important books, because there are no important books where the basilisk is actually in. So, but it's the only other major encounter besides the specter that tries to prevent you from leaving. This treasure here is optional, but once again, I'm going in for it because it's a bit of extra experience and kind of useful stuff. 500 experience isn't too bad, plus we get more bracers, and plus 1 banded mail, which is as good as normal plate mail and allows you twice as much movement as normal plate mail. You move 12 instead of 6, which is very strong. I'm a bit too much hand-me-down with armor in a way. It uses up a little bit of time. I find it more useful to have the better armor on the front characters. Now here's where I was surprised, because normally the kobolds come out of the well, but I realized that since I fought them at this other building instead, I fought them there, so it kind of doesn't matter. Still better to fight them in the well instead of here, but it doesn't really matter. So here's Norris the Grey. An already easy fight with a lot of sleep spells and stuff becomes ridiculously easy when you can just blow them up with fireballs. Boom, 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 boom. Probably should have done a sleep spell with one of those characters right there as well, just to take care of them. But that's okay. These guys went down pretty darn fast. So Kuto's Well, pretty easy. And again, a lot of free experience from collecting his loot. You get about 800 experience from his treasure pile, as well as 200 from him himself, and then more from turning in at the clerk. So I think that it's a perfectly fine requirement to do this. There, 867 plus the 200 is 1,000. If I am dividing that up by 5 instead of 6, that's another 20% bonus. That'd be about 1,200 just from these 2 little encounters instead. So good area to clear. And then next I'll be going back to town and then going to Plaza Cordona Library. Again, I could save a lot of time by skipping through this. Radiance down way too far. He got hit an awful lot. He's down way too far to worry about your light wound spells on. I think that the cleric is useful and a time save mostly just in the final fight, which there are a couple of ways you can, or the penultimate fight, which is generally more dangerous than the Tyrant Thraxus fight, at least the way I've always played this game, as we'll see. That's where we're going to see the cleric actually be semi-useful. Get a little bit turned around in my exit of the slums again. I have it mostly memorized, but again, you know, been a couple of months, so not exactly at my very best for it. But yeah, I come in to turn in Kuto's Well for whatever silly reason. I'm just too used to certain patterns and things. A little bit I did remember the game. That's what I did. Then I ended up not doing much with the library, or Cordona's Textile House, or the plaza, except for I ended up, the last few times I ran this game, I cut that entirely from my route, except for to grab the treasure. I didn't even grab that anymore. I went to Gordona's library to pick up a fireball scroll so I could fireball the Temple of Bane. Of course, now that we can grab Necklace of Missiles this early, we don't even need to worry about that. But it doesn't even give me well, it gives me a bit of a strength spell. This is what I need, though, and actually, once again, this is the reason why I did it. That's right, because I needed the knock spell. In order to get into the library, you need the knock spell. Or a tremendously huge strength. You have, like, if you have an 18-100 strength, you have a 1 in 6 chance, I believe, of breaking in. Anything lower than that won't do it. So you can't pick it, so the knock spell is by and far the easiest way. So I needed that in order to get into the well. But once again, if I change my route up and instead go to the temple, wealthy area, and mansion and clear those out at this point first, I'll have the ability here. Now, I was looking for, before going to the library, I also wanted to pick up silver mirrors so I could fight the basilisk safely. But as it turns out, I was going off of luck. I was just going to search all the shops until I found a general one. But the first place I went into was this tavern. And if you go into the tavern, you almost always get stuck in a drunken brawl. So unfortunately, I have to deal with this. This is another time loss that should be really easy to cut from the run. Especially if I don't end up facing the basilisk, so I don't need to go into the general shop. We'll see. It's a pretty quick battle overall. The fireball helps out here, and the rest of these guys are actually really weak, so they die fast. But it's still a time loss that was unnecessary and that can be cut out pretty easily. Also, I should have split Kuto's Well quite a bit ago. Again, it doesn't really matter, especially since I'm going to be changing the route up again. Next time I do this, I know there are several things I'm going to be doing differently. Start out 5 characters. I'm going to go from Sokal Keep to the Temple, Wealthy Area, Mansion next. Then do the 4 section in one go. That will save probably at least 20 to 30 minutes. Pretty sure based on where I'm at right now. Ended up being a surprisingly good amount of experience just because of all the money that these guys had. Arms and armor shop. Nope. So this is the closest general items. So I buy my silver mirrors to deal with the basilisk. Can't remember if brass mirrors work or not, but I mean, it's a pretty minor 10 more gold per person is not a big deal either. That, interestingly, amusingly, as I found out, doing that stupid, I've realized and found out that doing that stupid brawl gave me enough experience to level my 2 triple classes to fighters, because they're getting only a third of the experience instead of half. So again, 50% less than the other characters. Ironic, whatever. So it ended up not losing a whole lot of time, but or at least it gave a minor benefit, but it's not like something that I want to try to implement permanently anyway. Just imagining the 20% experience bonus from having 5 people makes a big difference. If I do cut it down to 4 and get a 50% bonus, that's really will cut down on the number of places I need to go. Fourth level is all you really need to finish the game, although getting up to 5th level with your mages is pretty useful. But right now, Rise by Lizard Man. Awesome. So with this party, I end up having, I end up resetting because of some of these random encounters are too long. It's faster to reload, and especially even though you have necklaces and missiles, you do so much that you want to save charges so you don't have to duplicate them later. Although I could duplicate a few and then duplicate a few more when I do the Dust of Disappearance as well. That's something I can consider. So I go into the library first. Because it's utterly safe. There's only one place in the library that's dangerous, and once again I'm consulting maps and checking on things. That's what the delay here is. Once I get a better grip of what I do. As I say, going forward, I'll probably do Kuto's Well after getting the Dust of Disappearance, and make that a little bit easier. All the ensuing fights a little bit easier as well, especially the Spectre fight. But this is the easiest way to get to... I go in the northern area first, which is wrong, but you come in the southern area here of the library, and the Cordona's package is just in this room right here, through this secret door, and you avoid pretty much all other fights. You might have some random encounters. It's a dangerous area. You can get paralyzed by ghouls, or I think even wights, which can drain levels from you. You can get poisoned by scorpions. Once again, though, those become a lot less dangerous if I have Dust of Disappearance in fact, that would make even the random encounters in the well a lot less of a drag to worry about. And again, those encounters will have less people if you have a smaller party. The idea of using 4 and getting all that bonus experience is really appealing, but I think I'll start with 5 and for that leap. I'll see if with 5 if I can get away with how little I need the cleric. But right now I duplicated up 16 necklaces of missiles, I believe. 3 on my first 4 characters and then 2 on the others. That is just barely enough. I think that especially if you use it in some other encounters instead, you might need a little bit more to be safe. So 4 per person with the... if you have a 5-person party, that would mean you'd need 5 on each of your characters in a 4-person party, though. And it is a little bit of a... There's a thing I've seen before where knock has not been used. Like if you have multiple people with knock or something, it won't actually extend the spell. some sort of weird glitch or something that might be used. I removed my necklaces so I could just try to auto-fight with them with the silver mirrors, which probably wastes more time than just manually attacking it. And I think I ended up deciding to use the necklace of missiles anyway, but I wasn't entirely sure where I would. Again, this could be I could save just a minute or so just playing around with this by not bothering. And again, not having to buy the silver mirrors if we do end up skipping the basilisk. It doesn't seem to notice you, so you get like your a free hit on it too. So you might even be able, especially if you safety save just in case, you might be able to seem to automatically surprise it. So you could probably blow it up with fireballs before anything happens. It does give the cloak of displacement and a couple of potions, which are okay. I hardly ever use the potions, and even though I think to myself, oh, it'd be useful to use potions of giant strength or haste here, or potions of speed, I never end up using them in any kind of useful place. When you get the necklace of missiles, especially when you're this low level, everything else just kind of becomes unimportant, unless you're in an area where the fireballs can't reach, and then you have sleep spells for most of the game. So it's a couple different ways to think of it. There are 3 books in this area, and then 2 books in the mathematics section, which are very important, that you will really get stuff for. And they'll continue. The library is otherwise one of the hardest places to clear because they might continue asking for books and tomes. They often do. It's kind of a weird thing. Even the game itself is sure. I haven't looked at the clerks' dialogue enough to know how much they do it, but I do know that it has been something I've seen before. Gotten 5 books and they still complain about wanting more books. Whatever. But finding the 5 books and beating the Spectre is probably all that's really necessary to clear the library. I end up multiplying the Cloak of Displacement. It's probably unnecessary though. We're really, really tough anyway. And luckily the Spectre missed. Now I can't run away and fireball him because I don't have Dust of Disappearance. Again, this is something that would be a lot more useful if I did have Dust of Disappearance. Because I could safely leave. Whoever has the cloak could safely run away from him. But that's only one person at this point. Although I could safely fireball him from right there. I realized, oh no, it hits Viridian. I was very afraid by that too. Yep. Yeah, you need to get at least Viridian out of the way in order to safely fireball him. Very unfortunate. If you're not going to be able to use fireballs, this is the place where you'd actually want to use your potions of speed, probably. I could examine this video and figure out which of these 2 is the potion of speed. I always have problems remembering that when I collect multiple potions and want to use them, multiple wands as well sometimes in Secret of the Silver Blades. But using that before this would be really useful. I have to rememorize knock because we spent so much time in the library that it reclosed. But that's okay, you can safely rest anywhere. Now, so I end up going to the plaza last, but I think that the route I'll take now, going forward, is through the well, straight across to the plaza, go and deal with the plaza, go into Cordona's textile house. I'm going to take a minute to pull up my Clue book and look at it. Clue book map. You will not be able to see this in my recording. That's just fine. I have the general idea of where I'm going, but it's been a bit. I used to use a route similar to this before when I got a lot more experience. Yeah, and then you could pop in right there. Pretty short trip through the textile house into the library. Then go through the library, back into the textile house from the southern entrance to help you skip all the other areas where you'd get attacked. And because there are a couple of set encounters that aren't even on the clue book map. Try to pass through another area. And also just means less encounters because the Cordona Textile House is full of them. So it'd be faster popping through there. So you might have a moderate chance at getting attacked by people there, but with Dust of Disappearance especially, it would not actually be very close. So this is one of the areas where Charisma is important. Charisma makes a big difference in this game. They have it affect a lot of these bluffing of monsters and things, and the effectiveness of your disguise. So there's a chance you can get seen through, but with the entire party having 18 Charisma, our disguises are phenomenal, and so we get there just fine. So now we're through the well. Again, I save the games in case I get in any counters I don't want, but luckily we're fine. Again, Dust of Disappearance would make that a lot less of a problem, and I might be able to not have to quit and reload. So I decide I want to multiply the dust, these gauntlets of ogre power, and I think there's one other item I gave to everybody that I really didn't do. The gauntlets of ogre power give us +2 to damage and +1 to hit with our melee weapons, but most importantly, they give us a lot more that we can carry because we have a lot of money. But really, that was an unnecessary dupe the more I'm thinking about it as well, because we could instead just drop the money that we don't need. Because at this point, we are getting so much money, especially after selling a couple of these bracers and a few gems and jewelry and such, that we're just carrying too much. And having those things actually did very good for weighing us down. Top is giant strength, so I don't get a potion of speed from those two. Okay, but I could use the top one as a potion of giant strength. Although I think just having Dust of Disappearance, running away from the Spectre, and fireballing him to death is the way to go. Especially if I get a couple more necklaces so everybody has enough. But if I do take more things... So he threatens us, so that's the Cordona Textile House. So after we're all done collecting rewards here is when I'll count this split. Again, not that it really matters. This material is worth nothing. Okay, I think that's it. This was an extra free 333 experience. I probably should have taken one of these scrolls. That's another thing your cleric can do, is if one of your characters gets level drained, the cleric can use restoration. The temples don't provide restoration. So the only way to restore levels that get drained by a wight or a vampire in the graveyard is with this with the scroll of restoration. So I end up skipping them, so I can't use it to do heal Port Blanc, who gets his levels drained. Doesn't end up mattering, but if you have less party members, that can be a much bigger deal. So that's our 4th level fighter, which is about the max you need. Again, with 5 characters, I'd get her a lot faster. It's one of the fascinating things about this game is that, especially with the help that Rich B and Ozzy98 have been with their various runs of it and planning things out, and especially looking real hard at the experience, is that planning out an experience route is really an important part of this game, because the only thing you need is a certain level and a certain amount of items to defeat Tyranthraxus. And so this fight is semi-necessary. I consider this kind of necessary. It can skip a fight in front of the temple if you're lucky. Also, this battling in this mansion actually is required to clear the wealthy area. Once you clear the temple and this, you get no more encounters in the wealthy area, and it's considered clear. It isn't... I guess theoretically you could skip it, because you don't actually get a reward for doing the mansion, I don't believe, and I don't think you need to do it in order to get the temple reward. But it counts the area as clear, so there are no more random encounters, which is pretty important. If you have fast characters, you flee automatically from these fights. If you have slow characters, you don't. Kind of interesting. They did a lot into the work of how flee works in this game, even more so than really Curse of the Azure Bonds and Secret of the Silver Blades. Not a big deal of a fight anyway, even with... I ended up just delaying him because it's a waste of doing anything else. I have so many other characters that can do stuff. And again, my total difference in my splits and what they do changed this out. So either by looting all 3 places or by leaving, you get this encounter with Mace and his minions. I find that the easiest thing to do is simply to leave immediately and then blow up all these enemies. I went ahead and picked up Durton, which does use up a bit of my experience, but he's moderately useful in this fight. I could probably skip him. I don't think you need to collect that in order to complete the quest. Most quests don't require you to pick them up. There are a few, like Potal Plaza, but most don't require you to get the quest in order to complete the quest. Like the Yarash's Pyramid, for instance, big one there. So probably you can do that without worrying about him, but it's still something that I just like to do. Have him as a little bit of a safety help. Yeah, can... Of course, it's not as much necessary now. It was really more useful before when I had a single fireball, because he could often use Hold Person and the prayer spell, which I forgot to cast before the battle and would have been helpful, in order to just make your characters a little bit better on all their stats to deal with this. But, yeah, cast that point blank because he knew that he was too high level to get affected by it. But really, you could save a little bit of experience and time by not picking him up, probably. But something to consider. Again, just one of those old habits. It's hard to break. I like Durton. I like doing those kinds of things. In a lot of ways, I'm not built for speedrunning. When Ozzy98 first did his improvement on my route, which just involved killing the guards, I had very mixed feelings, I'll be honest. I was like, cool, somebody else is working on it, and actually how he designed this is really neat. But this isn't how I want to play the game. I do not want to play the game by killing a bunch of, just killing guards and getting experience from doing that and doing only one intended quest in the entire game, so-called keep. But then Rich B came up with his route that saves a whole lot of time just by getting the extra stuff that makes the game easy from the end game area, because you can go there immediately, and saving a huge amount more time with a smaller party and all that. So that ended up working, made me a little bit happier. Let's see, I think that wand is magic missiles, which I end up multiplying. That's the other item I end up multiplying, is the magic missile wand. Mostly just for the final Tyrantaraxis fight, because it's a little bit more reliable for damage, which makes a couple of other things that I do a little bit silly. But, whatever. But I think I do like the idea of doing the magic. I think how that final battle works out, as you're going to see, works out very well, having all these characters being able to just wave wands of magic missile. It makes the fight super duper easy. And it might be the one time I use quick combat on my next route. I'm actually really excited to do another run of this and improve even more on what I've already done. Probably over the next couple days. I might even be able to stream it, possibly, if I'm feeling a little bit better. Since I'm doing this additional recording, if my hacking, coughing, sniffling gets too bad, then I can always quit this and try re-recording it later. Once again, checking my maps, trying to figure out how exactly I want to do this. This is a little bit of a tricky area, and it's one of the areas I most especially want to avoid. There's a lot of experience you can get in here by looting the various places, but it costs a... you take a lot of damage from traps, and get a lot of stuff that you don't need. So you need to kill all the thieves in here, and it's very hard to know when you've done it. There are a couple of set encounters with big groups of thieves, and I'm not sure if letting these guys go adds them to another group or causes them to appear later. It's very annoying. But maybe once I'm more confident in having done this, I'll have a better idea of what exactly happens. We got hit by a trap, but we didn't. Probably made a dex saving throw or whatever. You don't have dex here, but you have saving throws against all sorts of weird stuff. But I actually did disarm the trap properly. Wow, that's one of the few times it works. This is the first group of thieves, pretty easy. Most of them are first level. There are only a couple of low-level thieves, so a sleep spell is plenty enough to deal with them. Then there's two more groups of thieves, I believe. A lot of treasure we don't need, so I just skip it. No, I end up taking it. Okay, whatever. That was a bit foolish. I probably didn't need it. Okay, you want to go south. That takes you to the bigger group so you can deal with them. And then the one that you don't follow, who you would normally corner alone, apparently seems to vanish. I guess he rejoined one of the other groups or something. That's the thing that really put me off. I thought I should have encountered that one thief on his own later. It's kind of unclear in the game at what point all the thieves are dealt with, but they surprise us here. Oh no. Not super dangerous though, and a couple of fireballs, even though their way they spread out makes the fireballs less effective, it's still going to clear them out really, really quickly. Yeah, we get, once again, a really high roll on mostly first level thieves who don't need it. That roll was perfectly low, even if they save. The first level thieves die. The higher level thief has a lot more hit points left, but that's okay. These thieves are very fast, so they will run away rather than surrendering. I thought it was kind of some sort of weird morale effect. When I had my initial parties, I noticed that everybody was surrendering instead of fleeing, which made the fights go really fast. But once I had started doing my new group and had a fighter mage instead of a regular mage, suddenly they were not surrendering. They were trying to flee a lot of the time instead. I thought, oh, that's really weird. I guess humans make them do it more, but it's actually was recently revealed by one of the guys in the forum discussion that it's based on movement speed. If you can catch them, they know they can't run, and so they surrender instead. So again, he utterly fails to disarm it. So it actually wastes time and doesn't do much. So I tried to disarm this trap, and again, nope, it doesn't do any good. Break it. Try and get stuff. So there's a lot of experience to be had in here with these things. If I could avoid those, that'd be one of the ones that would save a lot of time. I may end up being slightly behind my split by the time I finish this because of how much time this is compared to how my split was previously. But some of these other ones are going to save huge amounts of time. So this might be the final fight against thieves, I think. Those are very good for low hit point guys like these because you can take them out at range and it's a bit quicker. That's one of the reasons why it's good to collect those +1 short bows for any percent run. You do find enough use of them. What do you do? Disarm the trap? Nope, failed again. I think they expect your thief to be like level 5 or 6 by the time you come here, so the traps are all difficult to do. Of course, your thief skills are so low anyway in the beginning. Tried to pick it because I didn't want to break the stuff within, did no good. Again. So I've once again wasting time trying to use thief skills, then forget about it and just start breaking them and it's fine. Again, I tried to disarm the trap, does no good. You can't avoid the trap, it just means the only way to avoid it is to leave it alone. Eh. No, this is my least favorite area in the entire game. All those stupid places. What do you want to do? Disarm the trap. Damages one of my characters, luckily it didn't. More loot piles. Yeah, you pick up a lot of experience. One of the places I can do that I forgot to do, though, was actually in the wealthy area. After you've killed the orcs in that mansion, you can search the rooms for treasure quite freely. And you want to do it after you do the temple, because once again, that gets rid of the random encounters in the wealthy area. So you can search the mansion all you want to find the treasure piles in those rooms. They're a little bit tricky to locate. It's a random chance to find them, even while searching. It's not something you find automatically by searching, like most treasure in most of the areas. But that's okay. It's kind of random treasure, I believe, so it's not as much as this stuff in the rooms, but it is... It's a little bit of a bonus. A little bit more if you have less characters. But now I've got way too much money on me. It's kind of funny. Using this route that I have, money is a little bit tight in the early game, but by this point, I have more money than I know what to do with, and I should just be dropping the money and moving. End up keeping too much of it. But if I plan out a little bit better exactly how much money I'll need for all my characters, it'll be a little bit easier. You probably only get to about 4th level with the triple classes, 5th level with the secondary classes. That should be my plan to go with, and so that would mean I need 1,600 platinum on the dual classes and 1,800 on the other one. So yeah, that's not bad. So I just need to plan on having that much money, and I'll be fine. Once I have that, I know that I can stop sharing money or trying to pick up any items pretty much at all, except for the ones that I really need. Because again, all the rest of your items, I can get these +3 weapons and stuff, and it's nice to have them, but you don't need them once you have so many necklaces of missiles. I'm double checking to make sure I don't miss anything. Now I'm done finally. I thought that scale armor was good. Nope. I grabbed the scrolls because I was thinking that I needed a little bit more money. I was starting to run out. As it turns out, now I'm going to have too much, though. I really did grab just too much stuff. So there have been a lot of talk about the Cloak of Displacement, and there's a little bit of a bug you can use with the Cloak of Displacement, where one of its properties in 1st edition is the first time you get attacked in a battle with it, that attack automatically misses because you're not where they think you are, and then afterwards you still have an armor class bonus, but they know that they can't aim directly at you. They have to try and displace. So effectively, the first attack always misses, and you can actually reset that by unequipping the cloak and then re-equipping it. And so I multiplied the cloak for everyone, thinking that I could take advantage of this somewhere, but I never really find a place to really do that, especially since I have the cloak displacement. I mean, it's a +2 armor class bonus as well, which is nice, and the first guaranteed miss is nice, but doesn't actually help me all that much. So spending time multiplying that as well was probably a waste. Now I'm going to be doing this. Here's the split finally. I'm barely going to be ahead of my old split, but again, it's still... There we go. Now it's time to do the outdoor sections after I do my next multiplication trick, which I get a lot of dust because I have a lot of things left. I probably don't need quite as much dust as I multiply. I don't need quite as much dust. I have like 6 or 7 left over. But I ought to, I need to have, just trying to make sure that I have enough is a little bit of a bother. I never use most other spells except for Thinking Cloud, and there can be uses for them, Mirror Image to avoid hits and stuff, but just the way that I play this game and the way that everything works out, they're all pretty much useless. So it doesn't really matter what you get after Stinking Cloud. And I haven't even used Stinking Cloud yet, but it's actually really good for the penultimate fight, as we'll see. Just experience here, 334 with the probably 2,000 because I think I make 5th level cleric. It's less experience to get up to those middle levels. Now I start doing my next multiplication trick. So this is going to be a little boring section because it's a little bit on the clumsy side. I try to be clever with it as I prep it all, and the wand of missiles. So probably I like having a wand of magic missiles on everyone just for the final fight. I like having enough dust of disappearance on everyone. I probably ought to multiply just a little bit of Dust of Disappearance and then do one more multiplication before the very end of battle. Get me maybe 4 more Dust of Disappearance just in case. That sounds about right. I also totally forget the easy way to get into the town, which is a lot less, well, generally less risk. You can actually get really unlucky still, but I don't need to multiply the Gauntlets of Ogre Power. I don't really need to multiply the... Really, I could probably just skip the Gauntlets of Ogre Power. It's kind of nice to get the 18-100 strength for all of my non-humans, but it's not strictly necessary. It's be just as much experience to take it unopened and give it to Cordona, and then it feels a little more like that quest is being completed, even though, you know, it's... Since he's an evil bad guy who betrays you later anyway, I've always kind of had fun in the fact of betraying him, however that goes about, but... Turning in legitimately might be faster. I'm not sure which is worth more experience, though. That'd be the big thing. Because all the items are useless except for the gauntlets. The extra carrying capacity, again, is the biggest thing, but by now I shouldn't need that much more experience. I only have a couple more levels to gain. But I always had a feeling that I'd gain more levels than I actually end up gaining because you need so much more experience. My mind just doesn't accept that. So don't need to do that. Don't need to do the cloak. It's nice, but it's not that big of a help. Might even skip doing the cloak. Might kill the basilisk just for the help. Just for the cloak for the battle against the specter to help. Hopefully reduce the chance of getting hit on the first attack and losing strength permanently or whatever it is. And one of the nicest things about having 6 players is you don't have to worry about adding anybody else in. You generally have to multiply stuff. Although, not really, because you still need the same amount of dust and necklaces. You have less people to hold them. That's the biggest fear I have of going down to 4 people, is that I'll probably have to have 5 necklaces a person in order to get through the entire game. And then they're going to fill up on dust as well. Of course, I won't need as many bows either. I can probably just have the 2 back with bows. And have the 2 in front never pick up bows. Not worry about it, but... I can probably skip most potions. And or get rid of most potions. Again, I don't really use them enough, and most of the time when you're just using necklaces of missiles, you don't need to worry about haste. I even pick up a haste spell for 3rd level for my first character, Crimson. When he makes a 5th level mage, I pick up haste and use it because it can double your damage and all that, but if all you're doing is using magic items anyway, it's not that big a deal. And you don't get the extra attacks if you hit, if you do coup de grace blows to wipe out the sleeping guards. So haste is a little bit unnecessary as well. It's kind of funny how quickly your stuff fills when you have all these gauntlets and cloaks though. But if I don't multiply gauntlets for everyone, don't multiply cloaks for everyone, that's 2 less equipment I have to worry about. Again, so if I just keep all the necklaces and missiles and pump them out a whole lot, if you have 20, you can use them a little bit more indiscriminately. I decide in the end to multiply a lot more Dust of Disappearance because I think, no, 1 per person is not nearly enough, and so I do a lot of them. I'm trying to optimize equipment a little bit, because if you can have all your stuff on 1 person anyway, it can go a lot faster, because then you don't have to open up multiple people. It's kind of an art form I've been trying to evolve a little bit more in all my other runs as well. But it's a little bit tricky to optimize your menuing when you're doing multiplication. I've got it pretty good, but there's still ways I can. That gives me 12 right there. I multiplied 6 at first, thought better of it, that I needed more, got another 6. Now I think I do another, like, 12 here, so... And I can barely fit it all in my character's 6 stuff. I don't think I need quite that many. I should count the number of times that I use it. Because I have so many and I realize that I probably have a bit too much, I end up using it kind of indiscriminately. Luckily, the stuff lasts forever. It lasts for hours and hours. It's really incredible, as we'll see coming up here on some of these other things. Now I can't trade anymore to there. Can't trade anymore to him. He has too much stuff. He has too. I end up dropping his bow and arrows because I haven't been using them. I need a bit more space for the rest of the dust. I also take that two-handed sword and I never end up using it either. I'm like, this will be really good in the battle in the graveyard, and I forgot to equip it and didn't. I'm always thinking like that. It's... I don't know, maybe it could be better if I did remember to use it. Maybe it would save a little bit of time, but since I don't, I just need to get rid of all those items I never... Necklaces of missiles and dust of disappearance, that's pretty much all you need. A couple of weapons on your people, a little bit of armor. Grab those bracers and get rid of the other armor you have so you move faster. Go with that. You can run forward into distant groups a little bit better to toss fireballs on them. Battles in the wilderness are always your worst encounters though, so probably still going to be saving and reloading a lot there. So making my plans, there are 6 areas, but you can't do the Zentil outpost until near the end anyway. So I end up doing it in 2 segments, the pyramids, then the nomads, pyramid, then the nomads, then the kobold, lizardmen, and pirates. I can't remember at what point. I think the buccaneers, the pirates, I call them buccaneers because it's a little bit quicker to say. And they're pretty much the same thing. A buccaneer is a pirate. They're slightly defined differently in first edition AD&D. Buccaneers are neutral. Pirates are actually evil. Whatever. But I use pirates. But they're on the west side. They'd be nice to do at the same time as Zentil Outpost. Perhaps. Not sure. Pardon me. I need to do a little bit more testing with it to really know how it's going to go. But I imagine if I can really optimize, I might be able to do the pyramid, then the nomads, then the lizardmen and kobolds all in one go. Really lucky on the run up there. It's good anytime you don't get anything. Pyramid's really easy. Turn right here, you ignore the secret door, and that's pretty much it. Every time you reach a teleporter, you throw and move on. The next 2 areas are totally straight. Fun little pyramid. There are a lot of encounters you can get in here, but all you need to do is kill the wizard Yarash. You don't have to do it. Throw a rock, move on. Every time something goes into the teleport, including a rock, it deactivates. So the answer is knock knock. If you answer wrong, you get totally killed. Move in, you move away from this equipment. I thought about freeing the lizardmen first, then decided I need to kill Yarash first. A bit of a... They're probably just as quick to run in here. I need to remember to use the Dust of Disappearance. Luckily, since the room is locked, it allows me to leave without opening it, so I can remember to use that. That makes this fight a little bit easier. I should have used... I got a bit overconfident because of my necklaces of missiles. They allow me to kill a couple of them really quickly, but then I tried to just beat down. These mutant lizardmen have a lot of hit points, so if you don't burn them down with fireballs or get them insta-killed with... I was starting to run out of necklaces of missiles, though, so I was thinking about doing things like Cold Person, and I should have used some Stinking Cloud, but I didn't. That actually works really well on them. But if you don't insta-kill them with paralyzation from Hold Person or Stinking Cloud, they take quite a bit to bring down. And you could fireball them instead. If I hadn't moved Crimson up there, there's a place I could drop the fireball to hit the 2 of them and not my guys, but I wanted to save my fireball, so I end up wasting a little bit more time in this fight. Probably, again, if I have a couple more necklaces of missiles and I have a few more charges I can throw around, and I always tell myself I can just multiply them again if I really need, but I wanted to avoid doing that. So maybe just multiply up 3 to begin with, use them heavily, and then when I do the next multiplication for Dust of Disappearance, multiply a couple more as well. A couple of different ways to do that, but having the necessary amount of charges is very big, important this run. This is really easy treasure to collect and potentially really lucrative if it's something good. I totally ignored that one, but I should have checked if there was another necklace, because if I get a unlimited necklace of missiles that can... You know, there's always a chance. 2 long swords, maybe I should have grabbed. So, it would have been better than some of the other stuff I grabbed. Whatever. But if you ever get that necklace of the missiles, unlimited, give it to everybody. You can drop your other ones, and you're really good. The last time I did a big run of this, I forgot to release these lizard men, and so I had to come back for it. So the equipment is still churning away, by the way, and every time you leave this area and come back, it gives you a chance. But now we leave here. I decided to do the nomads, and then I have too much stuff, so I end up going home and trying to get more levels before I do the kobold lizard men and buccaneer base. As I'm thinking about it, my big hope going forward is that I can do pyramid nomads, then go over and do the kobold and lizard men, head home, and then just do one more trip to the outside, go and do the buccaneers and then the Zentil outpost all in one go. You might not be able to do that, though. You might have to clear everything before you get the... Now, there's a couple of ways you can do the nomads. One of my fellow runners pointed out that it's not very heroic to fight the nomads, but it is perfectly in line with the instructions you're given. You're just supposed to deal with the nomad threat, prevent them from joining Tyranthraxis. You wipe them out, they can't join Tyranthraxis. I'd also like to test this, though, and see how much slower it is to do the banquet properly and fight off the kobolds. It might not be that much slower if the fights come, because you have to wander around the camp. You do have to deal with the text, but it's not like the text is really of you know, being in the dinner and everything. But I don't know that, you know, the text goes really fast, so you might be able to get through it all quickly. And then if the kobolds are less than 3 really big groups, they die real fast to fireballs, so it might be, it might still be faster. There are a couple of magic items that you don't get from the nomads if you don't kill them, including the best bracers in the game. Armor class 2 bracers and like a +4 scale mail that I end up not even picking up because I can't carry it. Another reason I decided to go home immediately when I was doing this rather than check the other areas. But you don't really need them that much. Again, I skipped the +4 scale. Not that good. There is a +2 longsword, but it's just a +2 longsword. When you have necklaces of fireballs, again, the weapons don't mean anything. Not that much anyway. I already have a +3 mace and a +2 mace. So yeah, if you're fighting groups of course, the kobolds, nomads fighting with you on the kobolds might also be a little bit problematic. Luckily, you can fireball them without betraying them, so if they run forward into combat, oh well, we'll just blow them up too. It's not very nice, but, you know, speedrun. It's better than wiping out all their people, which is option B that I'm doing here. So it's something I would like to look into, though. If it isn't any slower or that much slower, I think I might go ahead and do the right thing and help the nomads against the kobolds instead, but they're not that much of good guys either. That's other to me. Not like one of the other options somebody mentioned was that you could potentially fail the quest with the rescuing the boy from the buccaneers. I'm not even sure how you do that and if it's faster, but that really doesn't seem like a proper way to complete it for me, so I've kind of been against that, but I don't know. I can see the argument for allowing it. It's the same as opening the chest or not completing some of these other clear areas. Fortunately, they don't let you advance on these guys to get them into melee, which would make this go a lot faster. Again, the Dust of Disappearance combined with the fireballs to wipe out their groups just makes this pretty negligible combat-wise, pardon me. Surprisingly, it looks like, especially after doing all of this, that the biggest time save I've gotten this so far is doing the graveyard. The graveyard is really annoying, and I wanted to avoid all the fights that I possibly could, and so I kept running from them and saving and reloading. But just going through it normally seems to greatly reduce the amount of encounters. We'll see when I get there. But I'm just looking at the split, and it's more than an hour from Sentinel Outpost to the graveyard. I'm like, holy cow, that's where all my time saved. I hadn't really been paying that much attention before. As I say, when I recorded this originally, when I did the run, I didn't have my splits going. I didn't want to worry about that. I just wanted to focus on getting it done. Because I knew it would be faster, and I'd know in general about how much time it took, and it was a little less than 3 hours. So I was happy with that. But there's still, yeah, a lot of time that can be saved off of this by making just better routing decisions and especially better executing a lot of this stuff. Cutting out at least 20% of the possible encounter areas and by ignoring certain treasure piles is one of the big deals. 100% glitchless is not something I would want to try, though, because, man, can you imagine getting shot by all these arrows? How much time that would take in addition to the danger of it. 80% glitchless wouldn't be that bad in order to what's already done now, even if, for some reason, even though they came up with it and they're the ones who use it, the other guys were saying that the force reaction, as I've termed it, in order to make an enemy lose a turn by forcing them to counter, to do a reaction attack against you by leaving their melee combat with them. They think of that as a glitch and would want to not include it in a glitchless run. I don't know. I don't think it's that big a glitch. I'm not the guy who even really uses it. But yeah, a lot of these battles go so much faster duping up the Necklace of Mist, the Dust of Disappearance. It's turned this run into... The one disappointing thing about it is that it's turned this run into basically just like Curse of the Azure Bonds, except a little bit more freeform. Because that's what Curse of the Azure Bonds is. That's one of the things that I pointed out in a couple of my submissions to GDQ and RPG Limit Break in the last year or so, is that you have two different runs, you know, and when you combine them together, it's two totally different runs. You have Pool of Radiance, which is largely glitchless freeform. You just run around and complete the game as quick as possible. Then you have Curse of the Azure Bonds, which you exploit to heck with by duping items and just breeze through the game invisible and throwing infinite fireballs. And well, that's actually what we're doing in Pool of Radiance now. Whatever. So that scale is like +4 scale, if I remember correctly. I was trying to get my hands on it, but all my characters are full. Money and everything else that I don't need. One of the big things I do share with, though, it's partially habit, but it's also saves a lot of time if you are trying to loot, because it skips a menu of every time you're trying to loot something of, oh, do you want to take the money or the items? Just share the money out and voila. But there are some points where it's kind of bad. So I go directly home after this. Trying to figure out the best way home, which isn't very hard, but again, checking all my maps. I think I was considering going after the other areas, but decided that I was just too full, and so I needed to go home. Now I have to go rest for a day to open up the place, but... Yeah, I was very big on that longsword, but it's just a longsword +2. Another wand of magic missiles, which is kind of nice. Means that I could dupe one less as well. Or save the duping until the very end once it's a little bit quicker, because I'd have 2 to dupe. Just dupe both once, and then a second one a third time, and then I'd have 5 for the party. One of the big advantages to having a party of fighter magic users, once again. Although, since fighter magic users are not required for that, having, say, 2 regular fighters... The party that currently is being used in the any % category, it is fun trying out all these different things like that. But if you did do regular fighters, you could skip most of the extra equipment. You wouldn't need. And you could get by with 4th level mages. You don't really need 5th level mages, so you could probably still get up to 4th level fighter mages if you had 2 of those. It would make the battle against Tyranthraxus at the end a little bit more dangerous, though, if your 5th or maybe 6th level fighters had to just deal with him as is, and you didn't have a haste spell. But if you save the potions of speed for that, that's a possibility as well. use that before the big one. But then I wouldn't have enough stinking clouds to use on our one. It's something we'll try out. Probably once I've submitted this and maybe one more video to show them the general route, they don't have a lot of time for multi-hour runs because of young children in the house, as they've expressed. But Ozzy did do a hour-long any percent run, so if we get this down to an hour and a half or less, or he feels he can get it to an hour and a half or less by exploiting a few other things, depending on the party, that's a possibility that they might jump on it and then get it down to a sub-hour 100%. Should be really insane, but it definitely feels, considering just how much time I have to save on all this, feels like a real possibility. Need to rest up, memorize spells. Luckily, the slum has turned into my personal free inn that I can use since I've cleared it out with it. About it. It's why I kept it so long consistently in my any percent run. Silent Sigil, who is doing a lot of just a little research to help me with it on the side for a couple of years now, always wanted to scrap the slums from the route, but I always refused to do so because the early experience was really necessary. You have to pass through it so much that getting rid of those encounters and getting out of the way so that you could rest freely was a pretty big deal to me. But now it has been cut from the route because the entire route is less time than it took me to get my 15 encounters initially. So, I mean, yeah, at that point, why bother? Trying to figure out where to go exactly. Should have just been east. Should have been pretty easy, but I was plotting all that. I wasn't sure. I'm not sure if the... I'm pretty certain the Sentinel Outpost can only be done after you get the quest from Cardona, because he has to give you the diplomatic passage, the diplomatic parcel that has all the papers of the alliance with Sentinel Keep, which include the final injunction to wipe out the adventurers, us, in it. So you can't do that quest without it, obviously. I'm not sure about the Buccaneers, though. That's one of the big things about whether that will change my route or not. Big, annoying fight against Hippogriffs here. This is a waste of time. And this is an example of why you want to save the game and then reload if you get certain encounters. Because this isn't super bad, but it still takes like more than a minute to deal with these Hippogriffs. Which is less time than it would take to reload if I'd saved it often enough. One of the annoying things you have to do in save and reloading. Fireballs, of course, have less of an area effect outside, so they don't hit as many people, which is kind of good because it means it's harder to hit your party, but it also means that you hit that many fewer enemies when you're trying to fireball them. Just annoying. Now, I thought that this was about it, that, oh, yay, I'm finally done, but as it turns out, no, there's a couple more who didn't come running up that way back distance there. And again, the wilderness encounters are the worst, too, because you can't use Dust of Disappearance before them. Even it lasts a long time, but it won't last long enough for wilderness travel to make it worth it. Considering how many I multiplied, if it would prevent the random encounters, it might be worth it. Camp and save. Since I've been mostly playing Secret of the Silver Blades, there's a subtle thing in the controls which have made it difficult to go back to Pool of Radiance. I start to fight these kobolds, but there's too many of them. I get really annoyed. But you have to fight them anyway, so in some ways it was kind of silly that I should have just run forward and fireballed them as was, but I eventually gave up. I do that in the second fight coming. But in Secret of the Silver Blades, you have to... Moving your people around on the map is a command in and of itself, and then you have to... So when you're moving, in order to get to your regular menu and see things like encamp and view your characters and cast spells, you have to exit. And so I end up doing that a lot, and it's costing me several seconds here and there, too. That's another thing that if I get more used to doing Pool of Radiance where it isn't in there, I can cut it out. The very subtle things they do to operating your commands between Pool of Radiance and Curse of the Azure Bonds and Secret of the Silver Blades is actually a pretty big... Try and find the exact place here. You pretty much always get an encounter against a bunch of kobolds outside of their camp. Which is what made me realize that, okay, this is it. I thought that I was a little bit further away and it was just a random encounter, which is why I quit and reloaded. But it's actually this exact same encounter. And they're a lot closer than I was afraid they were, and this area is actually really nicely clear, too, so this really helps out. I think that is a better area than the last one I was in, though, because there were so many trees in the way that really can interfere with trying to do these fireballs properly. And again, it's for battles like this that you want as many people with fast movement speed as you can get. I spend a lot less time on the kobold camps here too, because among other things I have a lot more spells. One of the things I was trying to do before was get all my mages up to 5th level before the kobold camp, because there's a couple of the kobold caves, because there's a couple of fights there you really need those fireballs to clear out the kobolds quickly. Even it's just slow hacking through them, or even use sleep and such. But it's really hard getting all that experience. But now I don't need to worry about that because I have necklaces and missiles, and we can toss fireballs without end, so it goes really fast. I'm a little bit confused here, because I thought that the small cave was the... it's actually the main entrance that the kobolds use. The large cave goes to the wyvern's lair, which is adjacent to the kobolds, and the kobolds feed their prisoners to it, kind of thing. And I was a little bit confused as, you know, the secret cave, because we're going to come in on the side. But that, of course, you know, the wyvern would have to use the big one. I knew that there was a difference between them, but it had been a while and I'd forgotten, so I was a bit confused. I decided to try to reliably... Then I had to play around a little bit, because I had to remember, I need to use my Dust of Disappearance. I actually didn't use it for this fight either, which made it exceptionally dangerous. The wyvern does have a poison, which can insta-kill because first edition AD&D poisons. Yeah, luckily I don't take the damage, but I should have prepped that beforehand. I'd forgotten, and then only remembered after this fight. Luckily, took him down without too much trouble. But many times I'm going to be stuttering here because I'm trying to use the wanna grab his horde, because it's worth a lot of experience too, yes. I'm going to be stutter-stepping here a little bit. I think I take the longsword, ends up being a longsword. No, everybody. Because of this drunken kobold, I'm like, he's going to lead me right to the king. I need to use my Dust of Disappearance. As it turns out, you could use the Dust of Disappearance after he takes you, because you have to go several more steps. But I couldn't remember that perfectly at the time, so I was trying to figure out, okay, I need my Dust of Disappearance. I don't want to go against all the trolls and the multiple fights without the Dust of Disappearance. So we slipped by, I saved the game. What I needed to do was use the Dust of Disappearance, but I forgot. So once again, I slipped past. And then leave. Use my Dust of Disappearance. Good. There we go. Now we're ready. So the drunken kobold, you want to wake him and have you take him to the king. He automatically takes you past a couple of the traps, which once again, my thief was utterly useless in disarming when I went out that way. It's still faster to go through the traps on your way out, even with the extra fight you get, than trying to make it through the other areas, I believe. They did not... when I did this last time, I'm going to save a lot of time here because of how long it took me to get out of the kobold caves, because of all the stuff you have to deal with. Yeah, because you have multiple traps in your way regardless of how you go, so... So there's no choice. You pretty much have to. So here's our big battle against the Kobold King. And there are a bunch of trolls, which are dangerous. Luckily, the fireballs, even though they have a lot of hit points, fireballs deal with them really well, too. I have to be careful where I position myself, so I don't fireball myself while I'm getting the trolls with the rest. But I do want to wipe out all the kobolds that I can. And voila. Again, a wonderful area to be getting bad rolls on your neck against the kobolds, because they take quite a lot of damage. Once you've played this game a little bit, you get really good, usually at 90% of the time, 95% of the time, figuring out exactly where you need to put your fireballs. So the ballistas shoot us a bit, can't do anything about that. Warthogs uniquely here. Don't see wild boars. They're not very wild if the kobolds have tamed them, of course. But whatever. The only place you'll see these monsters. I paid a little bit more attention to my positioning. I could save a little bit of time here too. You can optimize fights quite a bit. Since blue is, or azure rather, is furthest to the right, he is going to have the hardest time hitting those guys. So I should allow him to hit the closest group since he's going to be tucked in. And if I have any other characters, try to stretch them out the farthest distance they can reach to fireball. So I can take out as many as possible in a shorter time period. The other thing that I do here coming up that I probably am going to skip is get the Afridi bottle. You release the Afridi, he is after vampires. So if you tell him that you're not vampire, you tell him you are vampires, he attacks you, because he's supposed to kill vampires. But if you leave him alone, then he will remain with you and suddenly appear in the fight against the vampire. But that actually turns out being detrimental for a couple of reasons. So he just gets in the way, he got charmed, and then we had to kill him. It was hilarious. You'll see that coming up, of course. I thought that he would be useful, but actually I think that's something I'm going to skip, because you really don't need to when you have fireballs and stuff. Dust of Disappearance. Having more room so you can just run away from the vampire and fireball him safely from a distance is going to be a lot more important. Good time save there. One of the fun things about doing a very early routing of all these games is how much time you save on your first few runs. Like, the fact that I've saved more than an hour just from an initial testing and playing around and doing this necklace of missile duping is a huge deal to me. And having those necklaces is what helped in the graveyard too, because I wasn't as afraid of all the random encounters I was going to get into when I knew that I could blow them into pieces with fireballs. I get pretty lucky in the graveyard overall, I think. I only get like 3 total random encounters, which is pretty crazy. But I remember getting a lot more when I did it last time, and that's why my split is so large. But it might be the more you... that just taking the fights actually makes you get less encounters a lot more. So this was an annoying fight, and this would be a good place to have your lightning bolt wand that I ended up selling. Oh well. But because we're invisible, we can end up moving away. I probably should have just delayed all of my characters except for Crimson and Azure and then ran them away so that I could fireball the a bit better. But I end up using the missiles here on those guys since I can't, if I try fireballing, I'll just hit myself. But since we have Dust of Disappearance, I need to remember that that allows me to run away freely. So I could just move Azure away, then use the necklace of missiles. I can of course toss the groups up there, but being able to hit in the corner would be a lot faster, do a lot more damage, and be a lot safer because I'd have less trolls attacking me, even if their chances of hitting are small because of the armor class bonus you get while invisible and everything. Still much faster and more reliable to use the old Necklace of Missiles. Less than an hour to finish this. Quite amazing. And I can't believe that arrow missed. 2 arrows. 2 chances to hit him. They just wanded him. I did hit for 2 damage, minimum, with 1 arrow. He has +1. Those aren't supposed to do +1 damage in most D&D, but they did in this game. In all the Gold Box games, pretty much. I don't think they ever get rid of the plus damage that weapons do. And they stack with arrows, so if you can get high-level arrows with high-level weapons, you do a lot of damage with arrows. Azure is taking quite a lot of damage here. Again, if I'd moved away properly before doing all this, I would take a lot less. But this is where I find my cleric to be extremely useful, is healing these guys up before my next big encounter. Okay, last fight in here done. Yeah, even the hour on my graveyard split, though, isn't that reliable because it's these are so different than the splits that I had previously. What do you do? Yes, no, or attack it? So we get the Afridi bottle. It is worth a lot of experience. But this is more money than we can possibly pick up. And I unfortunately shared, which picked up everything but the copper. And I'm like, I don't need all this. So I pooled all of my money except for the platinum, which is still more platinum than I should have realized that. I could have even just grabbed the jewelry and gems and then appraised them right before trying to level up again. Just to get just enough. But I spend a bit too much time playing with this. Whatever. Another one of those not a big deal kind of things. But definitely another little thing that I can cut out that'll end up saving a bunch of time kind of everything else. Just keeping an eye on how much exact platinum I need to do my level ups is a lot, I think. All the rest of the stuff is, of course, useless. Fungus-covered tapestries and such things. Yep, cobalt treasure. There's a lot of interesting loot you can find, like tapestries and things that are really hard to carry and kind of worth money and stuff, that they get rid of in the later games. But it does kind of give you that old-fashioned first edition AD&D feel of almost everything is treasure, if you can carry it. And so we unfortunately get this net trap, which again our thief totally was unable to avoid, which is a little bit annoying, but you get some sort of big trap and problem anyway you try to leave the kobolds, unfortunately. But going back into the cave is a little bit quicker. That's easy enough to do. It always makes me shake my head when my high-level fighters are missing 7 armor class kobolds. Spikes spring out and impale us, but don't actually do any damage. And voila, now we can leave. That's the kobolds dealt with. The lizard men is one fight. They're on a special hut that has anti-magic, and I always forget about it, and it caused me a bit of consternation. But it's not a difficult fight. But that's where you definitely want your... this fight coming up is definitely where you want your Cloak of Displacement, your high-level armor and equipment. I end up going with another one of my characters instead than Crimson, who has the best stuff, simply because of this. But you definitely are going to need at least one good fighter for this small dark cave. Not a necessary thing. I have no idea what's in there. It's not worth it. Oh, but here's the ruined castle of the lizard men. Anti-magic shell. I always forget about. It means I can't use the dust of disappearance. I'm going to try. Like, I can back off and use Wand of Magic Missile or Necklace of Missile to kill him easily, but it doesn't work. I'm like, why can't I use it? Oh yeah, the anti-magic shell. Luckily it doesn't affect the bonuses your weapons give. So. That's one reason to have the Gauntlets of Ogre Power as well. Give it to your one fighter who's going to be doing this fight. It's not a I couldn't remember the code word. It's savior. I had to look it up. I'm like, oh yeah, what is it? I hope it's written somewhere I can find. Yarish's Pyramid. Do you tell me what they tell me the code word is? Oh, savior. Good. Okay, let's type it out. Savior. S-A-V-I-O-R. Really mean savior? Yes. So now we'll champion. So I choose Viridian because he has the most hit points. He has Longsword +2, which is good. He does have the Golem of Overpower. And he has the Cloak of Displacement, which actually is a big deal. I was hoping to eliminate his turn, but he gets so many extra attacks that ended up not helping that much. Because only the first attack misses, and he does get multiple attacks, so it was a bit silly to do that, I think. Again, I don't think that glitch is important enough to consider it a feat. I don't think that the exploit is that good for glitching. There's only one fight in the game, that first magic user we encounter, where it's really a good idea to use it, where it's really useful. Got pretty lucky on wilderness encounters here. I didn't get a whole lot on my way towards the Buccaneer. But it's quite a trip. So if I can, from the east all the way over to the west side, so if I could string this up with the Zentil Keep instead. And now it's where I get a couple, though, which is a bit annoying. Wastes a bit of time. But if I could attach the pirate base to the Zentil Outpost instead and do both of them at once, after doing that other section to the north and east in one go, that would save quite a bit of time. Surprised by a group of Thrycreans, another thing we absolutely hate. Don't want to fight. This is a surprisingly simple and easy section. There's not a lot you need to worry about doing. And again, double checking my map and stuff, but once you get this down, it's super easy. All you do is you go in, you let the animals out of the pen, you rescue the boy, you get in like 3 fights on your way out, which are, again, first level fighters. For the most part, you blow them up with necklaces and you're home free. I studied my map a bit too long here. I realize, oh, I need to use Dust of Disappearance. As really, these are some of the weakest enemies in the game. They are so weak that even though they're medium-sized creatures, you can actually sweep them as well, which is really crazy. The game counts them as small for some reason. You can use your fighter's sweep attack. Whatever. Armor class 10, they're so easy to hit. My characters will still miss an awful lot, though. Yep, 2 fights, that's it. And you might get more, it might be random with a decent chance since guards are trying to stop you, but they are so weak. These Buccaneers just fall. And once again, just in praise of this game, for all the difficulties it has with the rules and stuff, they actually do a really good job for a game that is 30 years old, 31 years old now, having just barriers getting in the way of area effect attacks and stuff. That kind of little programming in it for line of sight, even on explosions and not just indirect line of sight. It's really effective, quite nice. Of the they have 10 armor class, so they obviously have no armor or anything. Big bare-chested men, but their combat sprites do not look that way. Oh, whatever. Now we leave, and voila, that's that. Now I just have to make it home. think I have one encounter that I end up needing to skip around, but nope, because we found the boat. Take the boat back, it's super easy. Now we just have 4 areas left. The Zentil Outpost, the Graveyard, the Gate, and the Keep. Since pretty much it's a waste of time to run back and turn in the Gate quest, I have Enter the Keep as my split that basically is saying the gate is clear. I like splitting when you get the rewards for things, but in that case, no, it's a little bit more difficult. Same with the 15 encounters. I should know I have way too much. Never end up. I don't need it quite as much. Rather than resting so I could go straight on the boat and reliably just use critical wounds. Although I think I end up getting 5th level and picking up Fireball and needing to rest anyway, so silly. Oh well. I also wanted to get rid of a bit of money though. It's easiest just to drop it from your inventory screen, whatever, but I'm just finding ways. So, get a lot of experience for rescuing the Bavantair. Lizardman Menace, you get a lot too. And the Kobold Forces. Boom. There's those 3 complete. And now he has a delicate diplomatic mission. I went through around the wrong way, but that's okay. The guards helped me leave. Now I'll get my level ups. Once I know my route a little bit better and I know where I'm going to get my ups, it'll be a little bit... And here's my 5th level mage spells. I decided to go with haste. I wonder what happens if I use the Dust of Disappearance right before entering the Lizard Man Keep. It should still work theoretically, because the game is not very good at dispelling magical effects that are already in effect. The anti-magic shell, basically all it does is it's the flag saying you can't use magic items or cast spells. But it lasts long enough that you could probably get away with casting... using the Dust of Disappearance and then entering the Lizard Man Keep. Probably lasts long. Because as you're about to see, it lasts a long time. You're going to see it twice, because once again, this is like a 10-minute time loss because I forget to save and forgot that I forgot to save and get a nasty random encounter that I quit on and realize I shouldn't have reloaded yet. But yeah, now I'm going to memorize my spells. Fireball is still the most overall useful 3rd level spell. I take Protection from Good on one primary, but the Protection from Good spells, I see the other guys using that a lot. I don't think they're that useful of a spell, which is why I've never picked it up with my other guys. I pick up Protection from Good 10-foot radius, hoping that it could be a party-wide Protection from Good for final fight, but if you have Dust of Disappearance, Tyranthraxus is not actually just all that dangerous. Never had a problem with him. And maybe it's just because I'm using 6 characters, and maybe it's faster to go with 4, and then he is so much more dangerous. He is when you're 4th level, you know that. Especially if you don't have Dust of Disappearance. He can be really dangerous, and every little bit helps, but... especially for 100%, you get so much other stuff and experience and things that you need that it's not that useful of a spell. We fled from the group of lizardmen successfully. I was a bit surprised. I was trying to figure out how to... from the map how far I needed to go, maybe? I think I was studying the map. Again, knowing the maps is really fast. Once I finally learned the maps well enough at Secret of Silver Blades, I was expecting to encounter something there with a group of armed guards, but luckily nothing. So a couple of things I learned from doing this twice. When you go to dinner with him, these are our quarters. At 1400 hours is when the thing begins. I use the Dust of Disappearance, and it lasts the full 14 hours, amazingly, somehow. I wanted to use it up from one of the people who had it full, so I kept it equipped on him, though, so he ends up using it himself when I quit combat down the line. 8 hours wasn't enough. trying to figure out how to, again, it's been a little bit, so I'm trying to figure out how to trigger the dinner scene. Relax until dinner, and then 6 hours later, they come and get you. So if you talk to him about one thing, you can talk about nothing and the thing ends. But if you try to talk about nothing initially, he'll ask you a whole lot of questions himself. So it's a lot faster if you answer one thing, tell him about the Pool of Radiance or whatever, and then just move on. Now I actually have Dust of Disappearance, but I think it has been 14 hours. It can't possibly still be up, but it is. And so I waste time trying to use it on myself, but I can't because I can't target myself because I'm invisible because of the Dust of Disappearance. So you can always target yourself, which is what I end up doing. You can target up to a certain amount of people within a certain range of you, but I can't target any of them because they're invisible because they have Dust of Disappearance already. I was testing it out, and yeah, unbelievably, I still have Dust of Disappearance up. Wow, okay. So, which again makes this fight super easy. I should have used some Nexus on them. I end up doing it on the redo because I have to redo this at a point. Again, so many minutes I could save if I don't end up doing that. More guards come running in. They're slightly more powerful. These guys I use fireballs on. Very annoying sitting through this part, knowing I'm going to have to sit through it again. One of the problems with one of the nice things about commentating after you've done a run is that it's a whole lot easier for you to talk about whatever you want and stuff, but I often get caught up in things I remember happening that haven't happened yet rather than talking about what's actually going on. Pretty simple. I have finally gotten used to, at this point, maneuvering some of my guys away so that I can fireball a bit better, like so. It took me a long time to learn that, but when you have Dust of Disappearance and Fireball together, that should be one of your primary. I think there's only one more fight to go. I go ahead and use another Dust of Disappearance because I have a lot and I just want to make sure. Probably 10 Dusts of Disappearance, maybe 12. Either way, 2 per person is probably enough for the game once you get it. Although I would need a little bit more if I do get it earlier, like I'm planning on, right after I get the right after I clear the slums, or clear So-Called Keep, rather. I really don't think I need it for the slums. They're easy enough. I think it's still good to clear the slums out first. Just get them out of the way. The Necklace as a Missile is more than enough to deal with the slums. Then do So-Called Keep. Then go get the Dust of Disappearance, clear out those 3 areas. The Mansion is the most annoying and potentially dangerous one because of the traps, but if you do it early enough, it shouldn't be a problem. And this is the fight where everything goes wrong. I didn't save and I fight a group of Driders, and this is one of the worst encounters you can get. The sleep spell, I didn't realize it had that long a range. It doesn't work well, but now he uses a fireball, which we save a lot of against. I'm like, okay, I can't sit back at range, so he'll just toss fireballs at me. So let me move forward, and I'll start using my Necklace of Missiles on them. I knew I didn't save, so I needed to get this fight done if I possibly could. But things go south in a hurry, and I decide it's not worth continuing. Because he uses Stinking Cloud, and of course it works, and so of course they come and one-shot me. Because that's the way these games RNG works. The enemies always make saves that your characters don't, and all that. So I'm not going to deal with it and waste more time, so let's just reload. I was hoping that I'd saved after leaving, but I was afraid I hadn't. And I was right. Here I am here again. And yep, we haven't even gone to dinner yet and everything. So we go back to our quarters. Figure out, so is it still at 14? So I do that. To make sure that the Dust of Disappearance lasts, I would rest about 13 hours. 12 to 13 hours, and then use the Dust of Disappearance. I use an extra just to get rid of it. And then relax till dinner. We get taken to dinner. Here's where I find out you talk about nothing, and he demands that you keep talking and keeps asking stuff. You always want to sleep with the watch, of course. Now the guards attack. Now we have to deal with the guards again. I didn't really want to do this, and it really seems unfair since I sat through this 3 hours working at it when I'm actually going to go take a break really quick and let playing. Yeah, very fast until keeps. It feels a bit embarrassing. I sat through this game for 3 straight hours playing it, and then can't do it commentating. I am ill, so excuses can. Regardless, Graveyard, the most annoying and dangerous area of the game, although less so than I was afraid it would be, and after I've had some problems before. So it wasn't actually an hour on this split, because this is a combination of several splits I deleted and stuff, but it took me quite a while to get through the Graveyard, and one of the things was that I was trying desperately to run away from fights to avoid them, because the fights take so long, and wasted probably in the end more time doing that. But with necklaces and missiles, it's a lot more reliable to take out large swaths of them as much, so I don't have to worry about it. Unfortunately, Viridian has used up all of his necklace and missiles. Yeah, I'm getting towards the end game, and they're starting to run dry, so that's unfortunate. I do have, fortunately, the fireballs of a couple of my characters on their own, but doesn't always help when you're not on that character, or if you've used them on a previous outing and have not memorized your spells. Skeletons are easy enough with just a few left. I decided to just fight them. Should have just skipped him, though, instead of changing out to a melee weapon and just had another character with a melee weapon go. You sneak up on enemies and you can safely flee from them. But then I get another encounter real fast, but it actually turns out to be the last random encounter I have, I believe. Again, I'm examining my map to figure out what I need to do. Once I have this a little bit better memorized, this will go a lot faster as well. You need to take out 2 specters to get into the... 2 of the specters to get into the... vampire, and then just kill the vampire twice, and you're good. So, again, the last fight, I end up using to turn undead too, which is a little bit of a mistake. I'm hoping to destroy them, but he's not high enough level to cleric to do that. I don't think it's actually implemented automatically destruction either from level or just because the game mechanics until later on. Somehow we missed hitting that level, that 8 armor class zombie. Wonderful, wonderful RPG RNG, especially when it's simulating real dice rolls. D&D's chances to hit were always a bit, especially talking just the D20. There's supposed to be an evil magic user here who offers to join you. I've never met him. I don't know what's required to trigger him. So this white encounter is potentially dangerous because they can drain levels, so I decided to move my party away so that I could more easily fireball them and not get attacked in melee. Then I think I end up making a mistake by going back in, but they don't end up hitting me at all, so I don't lose any levels to these guys, thankfully. Finally, Azure gets to go, so we can get away from them and fireball a bit more. I should have used a few more fireballs, but again, I was a little bit leery of using some of them up because I'm running out. It's near the end of the game, but I still don't have a whole lot of them left. So for situations like this where I don't want to melee these guys, the wand of magic missiles are pretty darn useful. Although if I just had more fireballs, that'd be best. Finally say, okay, I'm not even sure if I can damage the whites because I'm using normal arrows. It's the game is not consistent with magical items affecting when you're talking range magic items affecting enemies that are immune to non-magical weapons and such. Trap, we surprise a figure, which makes this fight an easy one. Again, we can't really use necklace of missiles here, but this is another place where it's good that everybody has wands of magic, because we can get guaranteed damage from outside of melee to whittle down his hit points. And cast magic missile. So that's the first one dealt with. Now we have to deal with these specters right here. I saved the game right before the battle just in case. Oh, and luckily they're at range, so that makes this fight really easy. I can just run up and fireball the 2 of them. Or magic missile them since I don't have fireballs for him. Good fireball there. One saved, one didn't. 37 damage from a single attack is good. Anyway, you slice it, and that's it. Now we just have the vampire. Both times we have to fight him. Straight over here. Because we've dealt with the one specter that was doing the knights, this area should be free of any undead encounters. And now, boom, our 3D friend has appeared, but he's just going to make this more difficult because of positioning. So this is something I'm going to avoid in the future. Vampire's dangerous, of course. If he hits, he level drains, which of course he does during. Then, unfortunately, because the Afridi is there, I can't run my characters. I decide these are just wolves, so I decide to throw its stinking cloud out since I don't want to attack. Want to try and deal with them as much. Yay, sleep spell works. At this point, wolves like that are about the only thing that sleep spells do work. So he charms the vampire, and then he hits my guy. Level drains him 2 levels, which is bad, but... oh well. Like, yeah, you got hit and level drain. Crap. Could have tried using the spell magic on the Afridi, but I didn't want to risk losing like my Dust of Disappearance as well, because oftentimes in these games the spell magic is pretty indiscriminate, and it is something that can theoretically happen to Dust of Disappearance, so I just end up killing him too. Even with my bare hands, you can kill a wolf that is choking and gagging. There's a 55 hit points. The Afridi has got more hit points and is more powerful than the vampire. Finally took him down. Not sure how much of the experience was him on the 760. Turns into a vapor cloud and floats away. Now we have to stick a drop the Afridi bottle because we don't need it anymore. Now we would need to put a stake through his body in the coffin, but as it turns out, he just is very weak now, so we need to finish him off. Luckily, we can move away from him and fireball him or magic missile him down. In case maybe he only has 15 hit points, so for this fight. Boom, took him down easy. As expected. I'm saving just in case I get into any more encounters or whatever, but there are actually no more encounters here. I was double checking my levels and such that I'd suffered, and yeah, Blanc has been level drained. But the vampire defeated, all the undead are dealt with in the graveyard. Voila. Now I was trying to, hoping that I could get restoration, but restoration isn't in the list here, so unfortunately I have no way of healing up my poor little Blanc. He's going to be stuck as a 4th level guy. Everybody else is 5th level. He lost 17,000 experience basically. Since I have a party of 6, it's not a huge deal, though. And it actually ends up creating... The game does not know how to handle level loss very well. It's something we've actually discussed a bit on the forums. You can create a bit of a glitch with level underflows, and it affects the spells that he can memorize as well, as we're about to see. So, kind of a glitch you can't do much about. That's graveyard clear. Boom. 1 hour. Now I go ahead and talk to this guy for the last bit. Bring up Thief first. He's a level 6 Thief. Yay. He's so much better now. Nobody can... They can train up their fighter levels amazingly, but the other two are stuck at 5th level. You can't even make 6th level cleric. I don't even know if it's possible. And they do make their 5th level magic user. Go ahead and grab a couple more fireball spells, which are a little bit more powerful than the Necklace of Missiles because they are guaranteed to roll 5d6. The Necklace of Missile ones, some of them will roll more than 5d6, but most of them are lower, and there are quite a few like 3d6, which are where you get your 9 and 8 and 7 point fireballs from. I've never seen it roll lower than that, but their potential is there. I think 5 is the scene, actually, once. Now, Blanc has 25 magic missiles that he can memorize. And maybe more than that, because I keep memorizing it, and now weird things are happening. I'm not quite sure what's happening on. He's got a sudden bless and curse in his thing for some reason, and those are not working. What are his spells? Why is he getting cleric spells? I don't know. I memorized a lot of magic missiles, though. Apparently I can cast them. Yeah, it doesn't know what to do about level drains. So the game is very confused as to what Blanc should be memorizing. Oh well. He's still got over 30 hit points, so he's not that detrimented by the level drain, thankfully. Again, get rid of the Ifrit, that'll greatly reduce the problem. Now, my fellow runners have used another trick that's much easier to get in here. I guess it isn't that bad. I got lucky not getting any encounters in the well, but the path that they take to come in via the boat is maybe not that much of a time save, but it reduces the chance of random encounters because you only are going to get... Now, to clear the gate, we have to kill these 2 watchtowers and then beat all the guards at the gate, which is not very hard when you have so many fireballs and Dust of Disappearance, of course. So you could probably beat them all quickly in one go, but partially because I have so many Dust of Disappearance, I want to use them up, so I go ahead and rest after each of these fights and use fireballs. Again, if I had a few more Necklaces of Missiles, I'd feel free to just use those at immediate on, which would save a small amount of time. Something I can do if I get the right number sorted of exactly what I need. Somehow this tower has an exit on the bottom of it, and the Ettins, when I used to do any percent runs and I didn't have 1,000 fireballs to use, the Ettins would often start running away in fright, and they would actually escape off the bottom of the map. It's kind of hilarious. Like, what do they do? Are they jumping out the window or something? I don't know. Whatever. But with all these fireballs, even the Ettins get taken down pretty quick. Now, the alarm starts ringing, and if we were to immediately go down the stairs, we'd encounter the guards from the other tower. But one of the advantages to resting there is that the alarm turns off, and so they're not prepared for us. They're like, huh, we were expecting people to come out of the tower, but nobody's come, so I guess everything's fine, and they go back to their own tower. Okay. But only 3 fights left after this in the entire game. That's one of the nice. And no random encounters in these areas, really. One of the other nice. Curse of the Azure Bonds has a lot of encounters throughout. It's one of the things that makes that a more frustrating run. And they tend to be very long and difficult to deal with. The one exception are the ones in the Wizard's Tower, which sometimes can be bad, but for the most part you're only fighting 3 to 4 guys. And so you can usually take them down relatively fast. It's at least faster than trying to quit and reload, but everywhere else that's not the case. The fights are usually so annoyingly long. Even with Necklaces of Fireballs, it's faster to quit and reload. But not as much of a problem here, except for very certain areas. You can avoid a lot of the fights and stuff. Most of the ones in Curse you can't avoid. Secret of the Silver Blades goes back to being a lot nicer. There's only one area where the encounters are problematic enough that you constantly have to quit and reload. Only one area in the entire game. All the rest you can either easily avoid them or they're really fast. Not nearly as many bugbears as I thought would be. There's my row of magic missiles. But he has a necklace of missiles. That instead. It's a very good fireball off of that, which is guaranteed to blow up most of the bugbears, especially since they didn't make any saves. If they had saved and actually, they would have survived, but none of them made their saving throw. So that was nearly the entire group right there. And those guys didn't make saving throws either. Apparently bugbears are extremely flammable, so they can't save against fireball. And now we can do some magic missiling just for the heck of it. Will sleep work? Yes. Now we can run down and punch him, or use a button. But I end up... Voila, that is finished. Okay, and now the forces of Flan have taken the guard towers, so that effectively makes this area clear. We have to go back and collect the reward, but that's a waste of time to run all that way and do it. We can now rest in here. I'm not going to bother memorizing more magic missiles. I already have a nearly infinite amount, thanks to the level drain. So now we've entered. I was a little bit slow on that, but yeah, it took only 2 minutes to run and do that after turning in. So now we go into the gates, make our way to Tyrandraxxus's place. It's all pretty simple. Use our dust. Get through. And just double checking because it's been so long I can't quite remember if I'm going. It's all easy once it's into here. Up these secret stairs, and here's Tyrandraxxus's place. It's got to use our Dust of Disappearance. I go ahead and cast the haste spell and the prayer spell. Prayer is worth casting for this, simply for the damage rules. I cast the 10-foot radius. Unfortunately, it doesn't affect the party. It's just Crimson will have it. Again, I don't think it's really necessary, and at least not in this. I don't think it's worth, personally, I don't think it's worth casting anyway, but, you know, more dangerous times, every little bit helps, I guess. I use the Potions of Giant Strength, even though I actually don't do a lot of melee combat here. I just rely on spells and stuff for it. So yeah, this unnecessary prep would save a bit of time to not do as well. So what I do here with all of these mages is largely stinking clouds out the wazoo. I got pretty lucky, I think, on them overall, a lot of them, but it's still the most reliable way to deal with these guys is to throw stinking clouds on them and let them just become... You can fireball them down as well, but with 87 hit points on 12 of them, it can take quite a lot of fireballs. So if they can get ultra paralyzed, it's hard to say which is faster, but this one goes pretty well for me, so it's generally the way I preferred to do it. But if you, and I didn't have a lot of necklaces of missiles left anyway, which is probably the other reason I chose to do it this way. And in this case, especially if you get lucky, a cleric is really useful. Boom, there's 3 holds right there. Although a couple of them choked and gagged after, so maybe it wasn't as big a help as I thought, but always, the cleric is very good for this fight for that. A few other places as well. Probably might be a little bit faster to just use necklaces and missiles if you have enough. But it's not that much slower if you don't, provided you can paralyze them all, and we did pretty good on that. Theoretically, the Potions of Giant Strength and the... now they're all helpless, so they're all going to die really instantly. Yep, all 4 helpless. I'm like, okay, battle 1. Now I go ahead and grab the plate mail. Probably didn't. I grabbed the two-handed swords as well, even though I don't end up. Again, old habits and stuff of trying to use the rings would be better, especially if I use more of those bracers and stuff for armor instead. Could given those bracers. Yarash has bracers, armor class 4. So 2, 3, and 4 armor class bracers are all really strong, especially with the rings of protection. Better than pretty much any of the armor we could equip here. But after all that and picking those up, I decide, no, let's just equip the wands. The thing about the wands, especially when you have this many people using it, is that they don't do a lot of damage. 4 to 10 is it. But it's pretty much guaranteed damage. You don't have to worry about the rules against Tyrandraxus. And if they don't make their saving throw against his fear and they're doing half damage, that, again, doubles his effective hit point. So the Wand of Magic Missiles make this fight go quickest of any that I've seen. I think that it is worth it just for this fight doing that. Although, with the extra time spent to do the dupe, maybe it isn't. Hard to say. He goes down pretty fast to my fighters generally, I found, when I was playing it normally. 5th level fighters with 18,100 strengths to pair him into him fast with the two-handed swords. Only 3 people are weakened by fear. He does have a chance to resist. He resisted one of the magic missiles, but only one. He only got off one actual attack. Okay, he resisted a couple of times. Hard to say which is better then, but that worked pretty darn well. And now we have to sit through this very long cutscene that you cannot skip for whatever reason. La la la. La la di da. I will still rule by possessing one of you. No, Lord Bane, do not call me back through the pool. Whatever he says. Here we go. Now we return to Flan. Luckily it's daytime. Go in, collect our reward. First reward for doing the gate. And now our big reward for winning, and voila. 246.33, final time. And I go and I train up because it always feels weird just to quit there. And I'm like, I have experience, I want to use it. But that's it, 100% run completed. So that worked out pretty well overall, I think. Quite satisfied with it. But there's still a huge amount of time to save. It's about the time of my Secrets of Silver Blade's any % run right now, which means to me at least it isn't all that long. But definitely room for improvement. We could easily cut at least 50 minutes off of this, and maybe even more as we get down. All the way down to sub-hour, I'm not sure, but Ozzy and Rich B are the guys who'll find a way to do that if anybody can. But that's going to be it for me. And so this is our first attempt at 100% done. Have a good one.